I am truly shell-shocked. You can't let Sabonis get an offensive rebound in that spot. Not with under a second left in the game. We didn't get to this somehow yesterday. We got a sleepless Greg Cote in with us. He doesn't understand why we've got toilet paper stacked up in the corner of the room. He didn't get the joke. He comes in, sees, dozens of toilet paper rolls, one ply in the corner, and is looking at it and just is like, why is that in here?
I don't use one ply.
When you're going to buy 70 of them, you go with the cheaper one.
No, you can't go one ply.
It's an expensive joke.
You can't go one ply there.
No, you can't. I'd triple up on it.
I'd rather use my hand than one ply.
Oh, hell yeah.
I didn't even know they made one ply.
Is that right?
Yeah, you got to visit my mother-in-law. Absolute savage, that lady.
Amin came in here today on a red eye and didn't learn until minutes ago the result of the election. Came in, purposely didn't have his phone, and he had a sense from the general somber around here of what happened, but didn't actually know until seconds ago.
Dan, I had my phone with me all day yesterday. I made it a point. I said, you know what? I'm just going to enjoy life. So I watched TV. I played video games. I was on TikTok, and I was on Instagram. I was on Twitter. I managed to look at all of my social media fairly regularly yesterday and never once catching a whiff of what happened. The first hint I got was yesterday about 9 p.m. Arizona time, where my dad started groaning, and I said, I don't know. I don't want to know. He says, well, it's not looking good. I said, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. But that was my first hint.
How do you do Twitter without seeing Elon's tweets?
Seriously.
It's just all I see when I open
You
that
got to
app.
hurry up and click following, because for you, the algo's gain.
No, you guys are doing this not nearly as self-centered enough. I'm just in my mentions. I'm just living in my bubble. Hey, what's the Cinepope movie this week? Hey, do what you guys say on Oddball. Like that's all I did.
I envy your mentions, because if you were doing that with me, it was pretty unavoidable.
One of the things that is happening here, because I am obviously heartbroken, sad, angry. Greg Cote has come in here, though, without any sleep, and that promises a good show. Greg Cote has been up all night. Him and his wife have been pacing around the house. Chris, officially, your parents are grandparents who wander around muttering at the television about the future of America, and they're totally right to be worried.
Yeah, railing, putting fists in the air, shaking fists at nobody or nothing.
I mean, it was pretty clear around 11, wasn't it?
No, it was, because, first of all, Steve Kornhacky talks too much, but when he shows those stats that indicate she is underperforming what Biden did 4 years ago consistently in all the swing states, in all the major counties, that's a death knell, and that was being repeated. So you had an idea that it's not going well.
To your point, I thought John King outplayed Kornhacky last night.
What?
I went into the night, I tweeted about Kornhacky, he brought it. His first 20 minutes, and I'm not saying Kornhacky was bad. Look, he was good. John King brought it last night. John King has the little bubbles that can tell me where the votes are outstanding. Kornhacky doesn't have that bubble. No. So once I saw John King had the bubbles that can tell me where we're waiting for votes, I'm staying with John King. Kornhacky, you need the bubbles.
I'm hearing more criticism of Kornhacky here than I have anywhere in the American media in the history of Steve Kornhacky.
Like I said, pro Kornhacky. Not saying he was bad. John King brought it last night.
Both of you are down on you're both down on old Steve.
Well, how dare they rip off Steve Kornhacky? He's the original, though. Even though he talks too much, they give him way too much mic. But there can't be imposters.
Speaking of way too much mic.
He dyes his hair.
I thought the same thing. Kornhacky. Mm-hmm.
Kornhacky was before John King?
They're on different networks.
No, I know that, but I'm saying you said that they ripped, like John King, you're accusing of ripping off Steve Kornacky's bit?
Who had the magic wall first?
I don't think that's so.
I could have sworn John King had it first.
Yeah.
Did he?
Dad just says shit.
Yeah, you know what, Greg? I've been wrong about a lot of things. You just
I'm
go
not
ahead.
a political writer.
Just go ahead.
Mike's right, though, about Kornhacky. Definitely using some product.
Crazy.
Is your dad right about him when he says he's talking too much? Because that's not something I've ever heard as a criticism.
They do give him a lot. They're just like, you go.
Thank you.
But he does well. Like I'm learning when I'm watching him. Whereas the other, it's just pundits. I'm just hearing opinions. When you're with Kornhacky and King, you're getting what exactly is going on.
Can I say something else that really annoyed me last night beyond the result? I happened to be watching MSNBC. Okay, not to drop a name. They have this big sound.
How is that dropping a name?
They have this big
Dan,
sound.
you got MSNBC?
You just said a name.
I don't understand what again, to that kind of things on just nonsense.
I'm weary.
Look, he hasn't slept. This promises to be a great one. I'm telling you that we have the possibility. A scared, sleepless Greg Cote is going to be walking into the walls. He's already given us 2 board that kind of things.
Right. I'm not scared, just resigned. But MSNBC plays this big dramatic sound like they have an announcement coming up. Big dramatic sound, flourish of horns.
Exit polls.
Projection.
You're projecting projection.
And here's their
projection.
Here's their projection. The race for president in Illinois has gone from too early to call to too close to call. That's their projection.
That's an update.
It's
Right.
barely that.
Yes.
If your projection is that it's too close to call, you know nothing. The
Okay.
projection should be, we know nothing.
I feel like that's what we did yesterday with this exchange. Norv Turner back as a consultant. I feel like that's what we did. We had the giant sound of projection.
That was big news, though,
Here's
Dan.
breaking news.
Yeah.
Norv Turner returns as a consultant.
Yeah, and consultant means so much. Consultants do nothing. Consultants get paid $100,000 for zero, for doing nothing. Dan Marino has been a Miami Dolphins consultant for I don't know how many years. What the hell's he doing?
Put it on the poll.
It's a fair
Juju,
point.
At LeBatard Show. Do consultants get $100,000 for doing nothing? At LeBatard Show. You're complaining about consultants. You're complaining about the coverage and Kornhacky talking too much.
He's dropping names.
You're dropping names of MSNBC.
He gets MSNBC.
Nothing
Dan.
personal, Dan Marino. By the way,
Right.
We love Dan Marino.
You're lashing out today. It's an emotional
Just consult
day for
better.
you. Right.
Yeah.
Consult better, Dan.
Weird one in the world of consulting yesterday. You guys see the big news last night? Skip Schumacher is now like a senior advisor to Texas Rangers. Some people thought he's going to come in, he's going to manage a team. No, going to Texas, senior advisor. Friend of the show.
I couldn't believe that in the eating area this morning, you and Taylor cornered Rose and just buried her in
Yankees hot
stove
talk. Yeah.
She had no interest in anything you guys were talking about.
I don't think Billy had any interest.
Oh, no, it
Billy
was
had a lot of
fascinating.
interest. I
It
couldn't
was
believe how much
fascinating.
interest Billy had in the hot stove.
Well, because we went in a situation where, Taylor is there and he's bad-mouthing Volpe, which I don't think you could do if you're a Yankees fan. But he's like, I don't want Volpe, but no one's going to take him. He's like, I'd take Corey Seager on the team. And then by the end of the conversation, he convinced himself he wants Joey Wendell instead of Corey Seager, a 2-time World Series MVP. And he's like, you know who I would take at first base? Take Carlos Santana at first base. I feel like he'd be good at first base. I'm like, what a charmed life he lives where he can just choose whatever free agents he wants and they're probably going to go. Also, I was told not to do this, but I'm going to do this, Dan, because I love you. I don't know if we're in this point where we say love you to each other, but here's the thing. He has already prepared a song for Juan Soto leaving the Yankees, but has forbade us from playing that song until Juan Soto leaves the Yankees. We're like, but what if he resigns? He's like, well, then we could play it too. So I'm like, so it's just like once he decides where he's going, we could play the song. He's like, yeah, but like not a second before. So we're not playing that song today.
Wow.
We can't. Even if you want to and you're his boss, you can't force him to do it. It's not happening.
I will admit, hearing the name Joey Wendell was a nice cleanse. Cleanse this morning. No, it was nice. It was
you
just
don't
nice.
want Joey Wendell on your
Wendell,
team.
like, oh, he doesn't use batting gloves. That's cool.
Imagine a world where you could have Corey Seager or Joey Wendell. And you're like, I'll take Joey Wendell. Crazy.
Billy-
I had Joey Wendell down here.
Son of an umpire.
I love him. I'm sure he's nice. Good point,
true?
Craig. No, he's right. I don't want him.
Billy stomped out of the eating area yelling about you don't want Joey Wendell. And the part that I'm confused by this morning is that I came in here today and I think that if I were to either televise or broadcast in any way the Taylor and Billy sports show, that people would love it. That it got so deep into the Big Ten and the hot stove that I couldn't believe.
You got to put Indiana higher.
I couldn't believe the level of interest in sports in the eating area this morning.
Best case scenario for Indiana, they lose to Ohio State. They don't make it to the conference championship game, and then they remain a one-loss team. Then they can sneak into the playoff. That's what they're hoping for.
Dude, that is the path.
That's what they need.
If you're a Hoosier, that's what you're praying
That's what
for.
you want no part of a conference championship game if you're Indiana.
No,
no part of it.
They'll hold it
Zero.
against Indiana
It'll
because
fall
they are
apart.
not a football blue blood.
Do you think that's what the
That's
coach
all.
is saying to them in the team meeting this morning?
Yeah.
Signetti's a little bit out there. I think that he's telling them like we want
We
it all.
lose.
I think Signetti seems like the kind that like he'll get hit by a car to motivate his team. Like he'll have a car drive up and hit him in front of his team just to get him amped up. Also, he's gone next year, right? Like we can agree.
Yeah.
Signetti's gone. next year.
Definitely gone.
Yeah. The thing with Taylor, Dan, I'm gonna be honest with you. And it shames me to say this. I'm a bit of a veteran here now. I'm a bit of an old head, if you will, right? So I try to learn these young pups and tell them about Joey Wendell. I've had Joey Wendell. I've been through the Joey Wendell experience. I talk myself into I like Joey Wendell. But I'm trying to tell him, don't make the same mistakes I've made. I've been through this.
Wisdom.
I've lived this life.
Cagey vet.
That's what we try to tell America.
You don't want Joey Wendell.
You're an elder.
I'm
You're-
trying.
You're basically a baseball elder at this point.
I'm trying to impart my life experiences, not tell him this I directly told him, you don't want Joey Wendell, but I'm trying to kind of guide him down the path so that he doesn't get hurt the same way I get hurt by the Joey Wendells of the world. But it's only one way to learn.
Why is it called a hot stove?
good
Does anybody
question.
know? Because that's a very old-timey phrase.
Well, because it gets hot to cook.
But who's on a stove? Like
Things are cooking.
Are they?
I think that's why
it
it's
should be
called.
called the
But
smoking.
why is it called
the
the hot stove?
The smoking skillet would be a better
That's
phrase than
true.
hot stove.
You're right. Try
To
to
my-
change it.
To my great shame, Howard Bryant explained this to me, and I've forgotten why.
Really?
Oh, good.
Bryant knows though.
You get MSNBC too, or
No, I
Greg
just
Cote,
Wow,
not
that's
to name
strictly a
drop,
Greg thing.
not to name drop, but he was watching MSNBC last night.
Right.
Greg, you miss the days when like a child would learn from touching a hot stove, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how you used to learn the children. You used to say, don't touch that, and then you kind of like in the back of your head, you're like, touch it,
Yeah,
touch
once
it, so
bitten-
you learn. Because
Yeah.
if you just listen to me, you're not gonna learn.
It's a gag.
MLB
Once bitten, twice shy.
MLB.com has a definition. Origin. In the early days of baseball, hot stove season referred to an actual baseball season. Hot stove leagues in which MLB players would stay in shape by playing baseball in their hometowns while staying warm with actual hot stoves. I have no idea what any of that means.
Okay,
Right.
you read it
Old-timey.
poorly. You
Did
read it
I?
As to boot. It's not just that you
I
didn't
mean, that's-
retain
for me,
anything
that
you
was
were
pretty-
saying.
I have a different definition. It's it goes back to the late 19th century when Greg was born. People would gather around a literal hot stove and discuss during the offseason baseball and baseball moves they'd like to see. And it was very intense.
And it was warm
Yes,
also, right?
yes.
It was cold, and then
Yes.
and it kept them warm during a difficult time.
Yes.
How about that?
Can I just ask you guys, because I am admittedly ignorant here. I've seen a lot of box scores. I've not seen a lot of Indiana football this year. But because I've seen those box scores, I do tend to wonder. You guys are giving this team no chance whatsoever against the Penn States of the world? I know Ohio State we regard as a different kind of animal, but you guys don't think that Indiana could be one of the legitimately top teams in the country based on what you've seen? They didn't trail through their first 8 games. I know the schedule's not very strong. And then when they got down 10 on Saturday, they end up winning by 50.
Who are you talking to, Billy?
Yeah.
Because I believe in Indiana.
Nah.
They've been covering machines. They've been dominant.
They've played nobody. They play Michigan coming up this weekend. They're at Ohio State in a couple of weeks. We'll see. They played nobody.
They're TCBing inside of what is reputed to be, if not the best, the second best conference in the nation.
They're scoring 50 every game is what I'm saying,
They're
no matter who
blowing
they're
teams out.
playing. Like
They're blowing teams out.
31 against
And it
FAU.
hasn't mattered who their quarterback is. They just take care of business week in and week out. Are they as good as Ohio State? Maybe not. We'll find out. But are they comparable to Penn State? It would appear that way. I would give them a chance. And if they make it through their regular season with one loss and have that ideal scenario in which they don't go to a title game, which we're told won't be held against them, but it's Indiana. It would be. They're absolutely a playoff team. How do you keep a one-loss Big Ten team out of that tournament?
We believe in them. We just don't think that they're going to beat the number 2 team in the country right now. And then we don't think if they make it to the championship game that they're going to win the championship game. And in that case, a 2-loss Indiana's not going to make the playoff. That's all we're saying. They're doing what they got to do. To Mike's point, they're TCBing right now. They're blowing people out. They have some statement wins. They have statement games there. But now they're getting in their conference. Michigan should be one that they win, right? Michigan's having a down year. We know that. Ohio State, that's a whole other animal.
Indiana's a poor man's Miami.
Oh.
They're 9-0.
Yep.
Everybody criticizes the schedule. But I believe if the two played on a neutral field, Miami would win pretty easily.
Well, that's a weird brag.
Okay. That's strange. I mean, they're about the same, I would say. I would say
Well,
they're about
the
same.
rankings don't suggest that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
I'm
about,
with Greg.
Well, it's just all expertise that I love hearing from people that told me they haven't watched Indiana all season just 10 seconds ago.
Correct.
I thought you played them tough. I watched that whole game.
I
That was
watched
a.
Miami a lot.
Yeah.
Have you?
I'll tell you right now, after Greg's NASCAR take, I'm with him on every single sports take.
Thank you.
That was
Thank you,
so
Embiid.
brilliant.
Thank you.
I was very disappointed by deadline day yesterday.
Yeah.
Our last bit of news before we left here was Norv Turner's a consultant for somebody.
Big news of the day.
But as soon as we left, all of a sudden you get some movement, some legitimate movement. You get Marshawn Lattimore traded from the Saints to the Commanders. The Commanders are a buyer here because they're 7-2 for the first time this century.
I missed that one. Is that legit?
Yeah.
Wow, that
Yeah.
is a really big move for them.
I know. Commander's going for it right now.
That is a
Yes.
great move for
Yep.
them. I'm bullish on their chances now. Wow.
What was the number one movement from yesterday?
Well, now that I'm hearing that for me supplants
one.
Za'Darius Smith.
Yeah.
Khalil Herbert, not going to be a sexy one, but gives the Cincinnati Bengals exactly what they need. Do you know that the Bengals in their history have only made 4 in-season trades throughout their entire history?
The Bengals traditionally are a mom and pop shop run on coupons, one of the rare cheap NFL teams. You do not find a lot of those. I want to ask you guys what you made because when we were on yesterday, you guys were telling me that the Cowboys were sellers because they got Jonathan Mingo for a 4th-round pick. Can any of you explain to me why Mike Williams goes for a 5th and DeAndre Hopkins goes for a 5th and Jonathan Mingo goes for a 4th? Like, is that just Jerry Jones being Jerry Jones?
It's a Cowboys tax.
Terrible. Awful. DeAndre Hopkins to KC is the move of deadline day, in my opinion.
Really?
Yeah.
That was the big move. Because
It
Lattimore's a
was
big
before.
move.
It was
for
before
yeah.
deadline.
There was an
whatever.
elite
By
wide
the
receiver that dominated 4 years ago, and another team goes out and gets that receiver. Greg Cote likes that move. You understand?
He's
Dating
like-
back to
he's
Tony
like
Martin.
he's like it for 30
he
years.
loves that move.
Loves that move.
He loves that move.
David Boston, Tony Martin, he's been doing this in this market
Yeah.
for 30 years.
If you were good 3.5 to 4 years
Yes.
ago at that position, and you moved teams, A+ grade from
I
Greg
want to
Cote.
defend Greg Cote because DeAndre Hopkins, Mike, and I showed you this, was good last year. He surprised. Those
Yes.
numbers surprised you last year.
He did.
Yes.
And he got targeted 9 times, and
Right.
they're using him like Rashee Rice. It's on brand. And Greg may actually be right in this instance, but like I said, Tony Martin and David Boston.
Wait a minute.
Of course he's right.
Nothing truer has ever been spoken on this show than what Mike Ryan just said. Greg Cote has saved in his computer, a computer that used to use couplers, saved the column where he just leaves open the name of receiver who was good 3.5 years ago. Dolphins, go get him. He's been writing that column in this market my entire life.
Oh, excuse me for approving of the Tyreek Hill trade. Excuse me. I think it's worked out pretty well.
He's currently great.
Right. I mean, they got him in his prime.
Yeah.
You don't need to apologize for this. It's just
Well, that one
you
you
like
might.
that. Look, I like two-way. I like two-way centers, third liners in the NHL. We all have our preferences.
Okay, but
Hold on,
here's-
are we telling Greg that David Boston wasn't a big move? Like, that was a big thing at the time.
I'm just saying that he always advocates for the receiver who was good 3.5 years ago, who was past his prime. Tony Martin is the greatest example. There is no greater example than Tony Martin will blow the lid off your defense with deep routes he never ended up completing down here.
No, that's not true.
I have such a great memory in high school reading your Tony Martin columns.
Okay.
I'm like, we got to get this guy. Same thing with David Boston. You were the voice of the fan, and those are really popular moves.
Okay, I'm looking up Tony Martin here.
What's
Yeah.
your thoughts on Odell?
Don't look up
were you
David
happy with
Boston,
that?
'cause his
I was
numbers.
going to bring that up. That's a perfect example of why you're wrong. I hated they signed the ghost of Odell Beckham. He's done nothing. Odell Beckham's had an interesting career. The first 3 or 4 years of his career, he was instant Hall of Fame, all-time great. Since then, it's been a long, long, long time since OBJ has been any good.
He could have been the Super Bowl MVP, but he got hurt.
I can't help that.
No, I won't.
He would have been the Super Bowl MVP if
would
he
have
had not gotten hurt.
David Boston had 4 catches for the Dolphins.
10 targets, though, and 80 yards, so 20 yards a catch. I mean, that's great. It's just there was only 4 of
All
them.
right, I'm looking something up here.
What do
No,
you know
you're
Tony
absolutely
Martin?
like Greg Cote was skeptical about the Odell Beckham Jr.
Thank you.
acquisition.
I have the headline for your Odell article. It says, "New Dolphin Odell Beckham Jr. has the name and fame. Let's see if he still has the game."
Yes, but you have
Okay.
to understand that the hole in your argument, guys, that's a number 3 receiver. That's not the argument
You're right.
Cody's been making since the beginning of the written word.
He wanted David Boston as a number 1.
He wanted number 1s. He wanted everyone else's number 1s who were 3 years past their prime. Odell Beckham wasn't coming here as a number 1, so he'll write a column, a throwaway column on your number 3 receiver. But if there's a number 1 available, if DeAndre Hopkins is available 3 years from now, Greg Cote will be advocating for him in a Dolphin uniform.
Yeah, because DeAndre Hopkins with the Chiefs the other night, no impact whatsoever. DeAndre Hopkins,
I'm
why'd
with
they
you.
get him?
Yep.
He won the game for them.
Yes.
1999, the Dolphins reacquired Tony Martin. What's he do the first year? 67 catches for 1,037 yards.
Tell him.
Not bad for a guy who they didn't need.
Yep.
How many touchdowns?
I don't know, 5. That's
5
on the
touchdowns.
quarterback. That's on the quarterback.
That's a good season.
That's a
Greg-
number 1.
Can't throw the ball to himself.
Greg smoked our asses. Let's move on.
Thank you.
Smoked our
All
asses.
right, there's nothing else to talk about.
But David Boston.
He kicked our ass.
I can't always be right.
We have to accept the results and take it with grace.
I'm a human being.
I'm telling you, start with that NASCAR take. He's on fire this week.
Thank you.
Frank
Amin's
Thomas.
got that right.
You're not worried about the distance between the cars because that's more Formula One. What makes the stock car racing in the U.S. is like the cars bunched up together.
Yeah, but this is going to be a pleasant change. Okay, it's going to be a different kind of NASCAR. This is not your father's NASCAR. This is the Championship 4. You put the Final 4 on the track,
Yep.
and anything goes. Can the guy in last place, 2/3 of a lap behind, make up ground? That's what you watch for.
Do they race all the laps, or is it shortened, or is
No.
it long? Like
No, all the
4
laps.
cars.
250
4 cars.
laps.
It's
How
all
about
the
400
laps.
laps? What?
It's all the laps, every
Okay.
lap. It's a lap race.
Lapping it.
Lap dogs.
That's
following
right.
the cars, running behind the cars. That would be cruel to a dog.
That would be.
Talk about the Iditarod.
I don't think they'd catch up.
It might slip on the angles.
Imagine a greyhound on a racetrack trying to keep up with a NASCAR.
Might be fast enough to actually
Yeah.
have the gravity work out for them.
You think?
Yes.
Now I want to see it.
You name the one dog. I mean,
Yeah, well, or it could be a greyhound bus.
yeah.
The fifth vehicle on the
Oh,
track
wow.
is a greyhound
I
bus.
like that.
What are
Any
got a
vehicle
giant
named
bus
after
on
a
the
dog,
track.
yeah.
How are you going to get around it?
It'd probably tip, right?
No.
I don't know.
On a turn, you don't think that
That's
a
a good
greyhound would tip
question.
If it
over?
goes fast enough, it can.
Really?
Yeah.
It's
Billy,
a souped-up bus.
We sit everybody on the right
Restrictor
side of the
plates
bus.
or no on the bus?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's a good question, Billy.
All right.
Very thoughtful.
Take a sip. You've earned it.
Frank Thomas.
Yeah, first name, last name.
Big
No,
hurt.
I know what you were doing. Donovan Mitchell.
Steve Martin also.
Also,
Steve and Martin. We missed that one all day. So we kept saying it. We missed
we
it.
missed it. You guys are way too hard on me on Chris Wallace because he shortens his first name.
Christopher, yeah.
Christopher Wallace. It's fine. That's a biggie.
Notorious B.I.G.?
Does Donovan Mitchell count? Because Mitchell's not really a first name. Mitch
Mitch!
is. Mitch
Yeah.
is, but Mitchell, there aren't a lot of Mitchells. Like, it's the long
that's-
version,
No,
but not a lot of...
Mitch Trubisky is Mitchell.
Is
Trubisky.
Mitchell? Yes. Yeah.
Jefferson Davis. Given the state of the country, we might as well. Get those statues back up.
I don't know any. How many Davises do I know?
Not first name.
Davis
Davis
Love.
Love is it?
Yeah.
The third.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's one.
But
There's at least
it's
three.
gotta be
All
a
it takes is
common
one.
There
No,
were
it
3
doesn't.
of them.
No,
He's
it's
the
not
third.
one. We established yesterday that it's got to be a common first name and a common last name.
I'm trying to
Love
find
it.
last
Are we
name
doing it-
Steves now.
Are we
I don't
just
think
doing athletes now? Because before it was just other news anchors. If we're doing athletes, then the aforementioned Tony Martin.
Paul George.
Steve Martin doesn't work.
No, I'm trying to make
Yeah,
it work. I'm
Steve.
trying to extend it to Steven too, but he's a PH Steven. There's not a lot of last name PH Steven.
I'm still fighting for Philip Phillips.
Chris Paul.
Say, Mike, there aren't people with the last name Tony. Yes, there are.
Yeah.
I know there's a soccer player.
Yeah.
There was a boxer. Tony's a popular last name.
Not
guess.
popular.
It's with an E.
Unpopular.
I want to get to the important story of the day here that I somehow managed to not get to yesterday. It was as part of the promotion for the Greg Cote Show featuring Greg Cote. There's been a bathroom incident in the Cote household, and the backstory I want is this. You brought Erlene, your wife, onto the podcast thinking what would happen. And give me the context I need to have for how shocked your father ended up being, Chris, by the fact that Erlene came on and she revealed things to the audience that your father, I take it, was learning as she said it. And he was mortified to have discovered in public that his wife knows he's disgusting.
Well, especially my parents have cleaning people come on Thursdays. So when my mom gets home on Thursdays, she's always just super excited to get home to a clean house. And I want my dad to tell the story, but my dad did something in a bathroom, and my mom got home later that day. And it went from her being happy to be in a clean house to complaining about her husband.
But what was she brought on for? Like, give us the backstory on how it is that Erlene is summoned to be the arbiter on the podcast.
Yeah, you can listen to all this on the podcast, obviously. I brought my wife on knowing that she would make a big deal out of this minor imperfection in my bathroom style, but hoping and believing that my son Christopher and Yeti, the other guy on the podcast, would defend me. I pictured them, just overshadowing whatever she said by going, Mom, you're overreacting. It's ridiculous. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? Instead, everybody gangs up on Greg.
All right, but give me the backstory. And yes, I mean?
Greg, how many episodes of the Greg Cote Show have occurred?
We're on number 244.
Wow.
All right, 244 episodes in. You think that he's going to stick up for you?
In this case, I thought he might.
So you're bringing her on to discuss what? You're calling what a minor bathroom mishap?
All right. I sat down to go to the toilet. Okay.
Number one or number two?
Number two.
Well, he sat down.
It's
He
true
does
that I
sit down at
sometimes
night.
sit to pee.
Sat
He
down.
said before he sits down at night.
I mean, look, I can't
Dark
believe
bathroom.
I've opened up the wheelhouse to Amin. He flew in on a red eye. Can't wait. We get to talk about shit. Hooray!
Hey, I mean,
Hooray!
you
It's
brought
a
it
You're
great,
asking
it's
him about
a
a
great
bathroom.
day to be Amin.
So I sit down.
I get to ask follow-up questions.
I do my business. There's a plop. Okay. From the plop, up rises a couple of, remnants.
I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What do you mean you?
Okay.
What do you mean you?
The
Little
remnants
splash, little
remain.
splash.
You
Okay,
like
the
that?
remnants remain.
Splash.
So Erlene uses the bathroom later, much later, hours later, the remnant has dried. And she's disgusted by it. If you saw a photo of what I'm talking about,
Oh, we have a photo.
it's a couple of little dots.
Put it up, guys.
No.
A couple of, it's,
Oh, no.
that's it.
Yeah, it happens.
Okay.
It happens.
No.
It happens.
No.
Happens.
Oh, there it is.
But no.
Look at them. There
But look,
they are.
The
Shit
reason,
does happen.
if this was at the bottom of the bowl, I'm kind of with my dad on this. But Dad, this is at the top rim of the bowl.
Well,
For
like
the
I
people
said on
just
my
listening,
podcast,
there are
it's because
specks
they're
of
dots.
at
They're
the top
of their
rim
job.
of
This
the
is
bowl.
gonna look so bad when it gets posted by an aggregate site. This is gonna look bad.
Pro poop podcaster.
Take it off the screen.
Yeah, take it off the screen. I stand by my
What are
poop.
we doing taking photographs and making this content? What are we doing?
Everything is content.
People
nowadays.
have been saying around here that everything has gotten and this is the lowest rung. I used to think that the lowest rung on the televised ladder was Flavor Flav's reality show when a woman on the steps. It is no longer the lowest rung in the history of American television. We've arrived at it today. After that election, look at where we
Yeah. You're joining the overreaction by making a big deal,
No,
mountain out of a molehill.
It's not. It's disgusting, and you've got to do better than that. And once there's a plop situation, you're responsible for all consequences after that.
My wife leads a charmed life. If the worst thing in her marriage is what was
That's
just on
not the worst
screen
thing in her marriage. It's just on a pile of other terrible, dirty things like that. It's not the worst thing. It's just there are thousands like that one.
All right, there's a happy postscript to this story.
Ooh.
The
Crappy one.
after this whole
Hey.
incident, the next time I was in my unnamed grocery store, what did I do? I bought a toilet brush,
Nice.
one of those luxury toilet brushes
Oh.
that comes encased in a plastic thing that opens and shuts. And when that happens in the future, because I'm a gentleman and to keep my wife happy, I'm going to do what I don't want to do which is scrub the wool.
Wow.
So
Thank you for
I
that.
live, I learn.
He lives and learns.
Question from the gallery. Greg, are you saying that when the incident occurred, you didn't notice that there was a mess and then was discovered later? Or you noticed and you said, I'm not cleaning that because I don't do that?
That's a very good question, and thank you for it because it's worth discussing.
Yeah.
I didn't notice it first because the splash went high.
Right.
The splash was not on the lower bowl. The splash was in the upper deck. Okay, so I didn't notice it at first.
Right.
She pointed it out to me, but when she pointed it out, my reaction was, "You're upset about that?"
Mm-hmm.
So
If you didn't see it, maybe it wasn't yours.
Well,
Right.
I own it.
Okay.
Finders
I
keepers,
own
though.
it.
I
Yeah.
mean,
It's
I
my
don't
brand.
think that's the right use of
Yeah,
finders
losers,
keepers.
weepers. Yeah.
If I am to discuss what people are here today for because they want liberal tears, and in some ways I do weep for my country liberally, I do want to sort of talk a little bit about what many of you woke up to this morning or went to bed with last night, where America has spoken, and America has spoken resoundingly, that what they want representing our country in office is everything that represents, whether you want to say hate wins or whether you want to say the white man's got a dynasty. And there was that one loss, the Washington Generals, Barack Obama put on them one time, but they're the Harlem Globetrotters. They do not give up the power. And it's a dynasty that will stay in power at least 4 more years because people have spoken and men have spoken. You will not take this power from us. We will overtake the woman's body and will be a threat to minorities and others. And one of the reasons that it's such a difficult day for me is because, and people like me who are losers today, is that if I view that as a threat, and then you view that as your preference, you become a threat. Like, that's the America that I live in, and I didn't think it was the America that I lived in. And it's naive. I can be shell-shocked today and not surprised at all because we had 8 years of warning that this was coming, that America would speak. I just didn't expect it to be this resounding. I was surprised that it was close at all, the way that I view something as a threat to freedom. It seems obvious to me that what America has decided today is it's okay with a king. It's okay with a religious king, no matter what he stuffs in the Bible as a disguise that's criminal, immoral, that's near Jeffrey Epstein, that has credible accusations for 20-plus women, that is rapist-y and racist-y and just doesn't like others, that wins today. And I can't help but feel like I will keep fighting for these things, even if they lose, and even if it becomes more threatening now in America than it was yesterday, that you are a voice for these things that is appalled by what it is that was just elected into office.
When you say king, are you worried that he's going to extend term limits? Because if that's the case, you know what that opens a door for? The Washington Generals.
I'm also just as concerned, if not more so, about J.D. Vance being able to pull all the levers once they get, and having 10 years in office, because this might not get to 80. I can't believe that the plan one of how do I stay out of jail, I have to try and topple over the way that democracy works. And I feel surrounded, not just in this America, but particularly in this Florida and particularly in this Miami.
Well, the Florida thing is particularly heartbreaking. Maybe I'll live to regret these words, but worrying about J.D. Vance, I'm more worried about the person that's unpredictable, that is actively president, that is a lame duck, essentially, now with a majority Senate. J.D. Vance, I mean, he's a politician. He was on a ticket with the dude that he compared to and called Hitler.
I'm just saying that he could go for 10 years because he could grab 2 years of this term and then just keep going. Like the thing that Trump at 82 running for re-election, when already what you got at the end here sounded between dementia and deranged. Like it felt like it was falling apart, and that's what we're letting into office now. It feels like we're going to have about 4 years of mental health skills deteriorating in office between the last 2 we've had and the next 2 we're we're about to have.
In this state, I think in particular, because you saw states go to Trump, but also protect women's rights. We're one of those states that they didn't. I want to speak to people that have struggled with fertility in their lives. There are some married couples that have tried for years on end and are not exactly genetically compatible. And now with this 6-week rule, I don't know if that's enough time for some couples to know whether or not they're putting the mother in danger by carrying this pregnancy to term. This offers up a whole new slew of questions. It puts healthcare workers in a really difficult spot. And I don't think this state, with its kooky supermajority rules, because we have a state that is going actively against the will of the people, because 57%, which is a pretty good majority of folks, voted for this thing, and yet a woman's right is not protected because it didn't reach the 60% threshold, and DeSantis resorted to all sorts of tricks, censoring certain ads and news stations from covering this accurately, and by putting all sorts of tax language in it. That was particularly dystopian. We elected a person that opened the door for this and proudly exclaimed that, but when pressed on what he actually voted for, tried to sweep it under the rug because he knew it wasn't even popular within his own state. And despite that unpopularity, we still have something that more people in this state actually don't want. And it's heartbreaking for those that are truly trying to bring a child into this world. You've left all this ambiguity, rules for interpretation, and it's really scary because 6 weeks, there are things that pop up after that. And heaven knows the ramifications of the decision this state made by not getting it to that 60% threshold.
Apparently, though, the bodies of women weren't on the top priority of one vote voters or one issue voters, where you look at economy and deportation as being higher than that. And so men stay in power, and you will see the Dana Whites of the world and the Elon Musks of the world continue to get rewarded for 4 years. I don't know if you've been listening to this show, how it's going to be avoidable to get around the fear. The one positive you could say about today is that the thing that happened was about the only thing that could happen there that wouldn't lead to violence. Because there's not
if it went the other way.
Right.
You're saying,
I'm saying that this, like, I was concerned about violence today, but this, like, America's spoken. This is not unclear. Like this, it was not close. Like, I was surprised that polling had it close, because look at what a white man in a suit has to be as a personality to be even to a black woman. Look at what has to be the disparity for them to be even. I was surprised that that was even, but it ain't even. Like, America's spoken. America thinks, and it's across the board. It's not just men, although they stay in power. It's across it's my people. It's Latinos. It's everybody saying, no, Trump, we want King Trump. I can't believe it took me this long to get to it. I am delayed, and I need to apologize to our local audience, to people who care about Greg Cote, and to America. Greg Cote says, and he is willing to make this a pronouncement. He is saying this flatly in the middle of a playoff season. If Messi doesn't get past Atlanta, Greg Cote has said the season is officially a disappointment.
Yep.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Officially. He's willing to make it official.
Yeah, it's big.
If Messi loses to Atlanta and Inter Miami loses to Atlanta after being an overwhelming favorite and one of the best teams we've ever seen in MLS,
right?
Officially, Greg Cote's willing to make it a disappointment.
Sure, because of that. Because they won the Supporters' Shield for the best regular season record this season, best regular season record ever. So obviously, and it's Messi, so naturally the betting odds favor Inter Miami to win the MLS Cup. Because of that, because of all those things, you have to win the MLS Cup. This is why they brought him here. This is his first full season with the club, one of only 2 full seasons that he's going to play with the club. You have to win the league championship. That's the starting point. Now, I want to make one thing clear. From a financial standpoint, he has already, his time with Inter Miami has already been a raging success for Miami, for MLS, for soccer
Well,
in
wait
America.
a minute. If it's a raging success, how can it be an official disappointment?
It'll be an official
right.
disappointment because he won't have done what they hope
But it can't
to
be-
bring him
it
here.
can't be
He's
an
saying
off-
from a business
But
standpoint.
it can't be a raging success over here and an
Yeah, it
official
can.
disappointment
No, it can.
over
Absolutely
here.
can.
Yeah, no, it can.
Can't. No,
It can.
Yes,
If
it can.
No, if it's a
It
raging,
can, though.
no, but if it's a raging success, it
Right.
can't officially be a disappointment.
Well, the season can officially be a disappointment.
But not
What's
if it's a
happening on the
raging
field?
success.
No, you can have success off the field
Right,
and
of
not have
course.
success on the field.
Yeah, I'm surprised Le
Okay.
Batard doesn't understand that.
Right,
We're
weird.
talking about raging success from the business money standpoint, but not the on-field product. If you follow up the best regular season record in MLS history by losing to a losing record Atlanta team in the first round,
Yeah.
that's a failure, unequivocally.
Wait a minute. So it's not an official disappointment. It's a failure unequivocally.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother stage.
Yeah.
That's official disappointment was over here when we started. Failure unequivocally is even stronger than that.
When
He's got a
you-
point, Greg.
What?
Like he's got a point. If you're saying a disappointment,
I mean-
well, I don't want to turn on you, Greg, but he's got a point in that disappointment is like, come on. Failure is like, I can't believe it.
Official disappointment. I mean, you just promoted the entire from the segment started at official disappointment, and
Right.
then it became failure unequivocally.
Let's agree on official failure. Is that okay? Are you good with that?
Official.
And how do you make something official? How do you make a disappointment official? Do you stamp it? What do you do?
There's
'Cause
got
you
to be
should-
a proclamation.
You should get a logo.
a
and stamp.
notary.
Yeah.
A notary.
Yeah.
Me maximum. You know, I mean, that's my standpoint.
That
From
kind of
my
thing.
vantage point, that kind of thing. Exactly.
You got to light a candle and then seal it and then put your stamp, like not like those stamps that you get at the bank. I'm talking
Right.
about the ones like Kings used to do.
Yeah,
They
with the
put your
wax,
seal
the red
on it.
wax.
Yep.
That's correct. Look, when you win the Supporters Shield, you don't lose in the first round to a team that had 14 losses. You have to win the first round at least.
Isn't this an obvious take from my dad? Like,
I mean, not according to Le Batard.
like they're the best MLS team in history, and they got to get out of the first round. Or
I think so.
Has anyone ever won the Shield and lost in the first round?
It's MLS. I'm pretty sure.
It's
A lot of
soccer.
teams have
Columbus
won the
Crew.
Shield.
Columbus Crew were the reigning champions, and they got upset in the first round. It's a bit of a screwy playoff in that it takes essentially a month to play 3 games for
Shocking.
Inter Miami. Greg's right on the money, though. We knew. To the American sports fan, we knew what he'd be judged on. You could try to explain all the different cups that they have ad nauseum. They just don't get it. They get MLS playoffs champion at the end of MLS playoffs. That's all they'll understand.
Thank you.
I could argue till I'm blue in the face that they've won 2 trophies in 2 seasons and have qualified for the FIFA Club World Cup. They're going to be opening that tournament, going up against the elite clubs in the world. That is a major achievement despite a very confusing, ambiguous qualification process. They're one of those elite level clubs. But yes, he needs to win that trophy in particular for it to transcend to people that don't really know much about all the nuances that go into that sport.
Well, but you said right on the money, and what he was right on was the money. The fact that it's a raging
You are
success.
flexing your pen today in incredible ways. You are
Yep.
such a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Did you workshop this? Like you're feeling it.
From official disappointment to failure unequivocal, I will not regard the ability to make soccer work in Miami because you got the world's best player.
Well,
and
once we get it in Miami,
Right.
it's closer
Right.
to Boca.
Agreed. But the fact that
big
they've
step.
got a stadium and they've got a multi-billion-dollar franchise and they've made MLS a talking point and they've made a business partnership in the sports media age with a streaming giant, I will not view this as only the on-field success when this was first and foremost a business.
He's won
It was
2
a
trophies.
business partnership that Messi made with this league and with this city.
Yeah, but part of the business is winning. When you
Of
get the
course.
world's greatest soccer
Stugotz,
player, you're
Stugotz,
supposed to win in that
Stugotz.
league.
Look, of course, Stugotz, yes. Win the championship, every team, yes. Win the championship or you have failed, yes. But there are other ways we can measure business success, and making soccer work in Miami is one of them.
And there are other championships. He won the championship he won this season is the championship that pretty universally across the footballing world is how you determine who wins your league. He won that, but it's also and this is 100% accurate, a retrofitted Captain America shield that was once held for ransom overseas.
Dan, you've argued about countless NFL teams about if you're not in the hunt to win the Super Bowl, what do you want to be this 5th seed for? Like, this is kind of like now you're arguing the opposite of that, that there can't be moral victories.
Look,
They lose this, and they're the Dallas Cowboys. I mean,
of course, the most basic thing I could possibly say here is a team has to win the championship or it has failed. Yes, we can make an eternity out of that as a sports conversation.
It's just confusing because they have won 2 championships.
It doesn't. Well, this is the thing, though.
But one of them used to be a toy, and one of them was the first year of a tournament made by Apple.
The League's Cup.
The thing that I am objecting to largely, beyond just the absolute nature of this is a failure or this is a success, and there are no degrees between the two, is that our measurement systems are often faulty when we're picking the best one-game samples, especially in things like football and soccer and hockey and baseball. They seem super random. They don't often or always reward the actual best team.
but this is a 3-game sample.
This is a 3-game sample.
Game
but-
3
yes,
Saturday
Absolutely.
night.
Oh,
Yeah.
But what I'm saying to you, because of what Mike is saying, how these things are measured, even in currency translations overseas, is it's like us right now deciding that in American football, the winner of the playoffs isn't the Super Bowl champion. The team that went 15-2 during the regular season is the Super Bowl champion, and we just changed the way we do all of that. And you can't imagine it because that's how we've done the measurements for all time, and so that's the way we do them. What Mike is saying is they've already won something that is substantive that based on American standards, you guys are going to poo-poo, and I'm not going to say that's a failure when he came over here and he made everything work. And yes, he should also win the championship. I would like that, but I'm not going to say that goes from success to failure if they don't win the championship.
What I was actually thinking is, would I be okay if they took that Super Bowl away from Trent Dilfer and gave it to the best team in the regular season that year? That's what I was thinking. It's not a terrible idea. I mean, I'll think about it for a couple of days.
The measurement systems across sports are flawed.
Right, but it's cute that you guys think they're going to lose this game. I mean, they're not. MLS wants them to advance.
course.
I mean, if the
Every call.
referee has to score a goal, he'll do it. I mean,
Not wrong.
I mean, MLS definitely wants them to win Saturday.
I appreciate the discourse and the fact that you're actually giving credence to the fact that the way that we do it here in the United States with that sport in particular is a little screwy, but that's how we do it here. And if that's going to be the accepted measurement, not just by people that follow MLS, but by casual sports fans, he needs to win that one.
Everyone's going to agree with you guys. I don't even actually disagree with you whether it's official or unfettered, failure or disappointment. Of course, once you put the expectations up there, everybody wants winning. But I will also say, do you know how hard it is to make big business work in Miami? Because I'm still waiting for the Marlins to figure out how to do it. And this team became a billion-dollar entity out of the box. And if you want to make the only measurement championship or disappointment, okay. But I'm saying there is a macro here that makes for survival of major league things in our city that makes me not be quite that reductive.
Messi is like no other athlete on the face of the earth. When the Inter Miami signed Messi, instantly MLS was going to reap the benefits. Instantly, Apple TV was going to reap the benefits. So was Inter Miami. In Atlanta, they drew almost 70,000 fans to a football stadium because of one man, okay?
Well, I mean, truth be told, Atlanta United, if you look at attendance, I know this was recent, maybe it's changed since COVID, but top 10 in attendance in all of soccer across the planet, club attendance.
so let's just say 35,000 would have been there regardless of
Yes,
Messi,
he's a giant
okay?
draw. Yes,
Okay,
he's a
my-
He drew
giant draw.
35,000.
My point is his impact financially on the business side was a given. That was an absolute 100% given. His impact on the
I'm not
football
sure.
side
I'm
was
not.
not.
Greg, I am not totally sure that it was a given that this would be the unqualified success that you're dismissing as a failure. If I don't think it was as known, Miami has never. You've covered how many years have you covered soccer failing in this market? How many
They've
years?
never had Lionel Messi. He makes all the difference.
Greg, the reason why he came here is because he wants to go to Publix with his family and not get stopped.
That's exactly right.
But that tells you right there that part of that luxury for him is the risk of, oh, yeah, he's not getting stopped at Publix because nobody gives up.
He wanted his own burger. He's like, where can I do this?
Okay,
Miami.
this is a career vacation for him.
No,
I get that.
You're missing my point. My point is his ability to walk the streets and not get stopped is an indication that this place is so soccer ignorant that the most famous athlete on the planet can go to Publix and one person might notice.
Okay.
And that's the risk in the business. It's like, what if we're so ignorant we brought the most famous dude and it still doesn't kick off the sport?
Okay, that's a good anecdote, the Publix thing. I have covered Inter Miami games, and when I am leaving the stadium after writing my column, an hour and a half after the game, I am walking through 5,000 fans waiting to get a glimpse of Lionel Messi leaving that stadium.
Greg, you just described basically going to Mecca and say, look how many Muslims there are. Of course. I'm not talking about at the game. It's like saying, oh, this athlete is famous. Why? He's in all these commercials, but he's wearing his uniform and a helmet and a football.
They went
in every
to the
commercial.
game to see him.
Exactly. I'm not go to Dave and Buster's. Go to the airport. Go to places where people aren't expecting him. It's kind of like us, right? Like if people see us on TV talking sports, like, yeah, that's Greg Cote, whatever. If you go to a random gas station, no one knows who you are, right? They're just like, yeah, $20 on pump 2.
Right. That's true.
Dianna Russini with us now. We've got a lot of football to talk about. Her podcast is called Scoop City. We've got to get to some of this football nonsense with her, right?
Nonsense.
How did you feel? What do you say? Mike Ryan just learned that Marshawn Lattimore was traded to the Commanders.
It's a big move.
He did not know that.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Dianna. Thank you for joining us, Dianna. What was the biggest move yesterday?
The Marshawn Lattimore. So, Mike, way to be on top of the stories yesterday.
There were a lot of things going on.
Busy day, yeah.
Be a busy day. It was. You know what's funny, though? That's a good observation to make and something for me to keep in mind as I'm doing this stuff because, as you guys know, because I talk about it so much on the show, the pressures and the urgency that comes with breaking news, especially on a trade deadline show or trade deadline day where you're competing against everyone and everyone's trying to get all the nuggets and scoop as fast as they can. But the way Twitter's set up now, it's so difficult to figure out who's doing what and getting what when, and it's become such a messy space that it's not as clean and clear as I felt like it was, 4 or 5 years ago, where it was very obvious, what the big story was. So Mike, while I would love to take an opportunity here to make fun of you for it, I kind of get it, especially on election day. But without a doubt, Dan, the Marshawn Lattimore move to me was the biggest name. I think the Zadarius Smith was the best move. But we all knew that was coming. That had been rumored since Aiden Hutchinson was injured in the Dallas Cowboys game. So it all made sense. But I was waiting all day and I tried to find out there's gotta be a big name, because I always feel like these are the kind of days where we do get stunned. And when you take a look back at all the different trade deadlines, there actually aren't a lot of names, right? I mean, Jalen Ramsey is probably like the biggest name. Maybe Amari Cooper a few years ago. You don't really get a lot of big names. This isn't the NBA,
Such a big move. He's exactly what they need.
Yeah.
I really like them.
Right.
That's a good team, Diana. I like that they're going for it, too. Dan Quinn, not getting enough credit.
No.
I mean, he made it to a Super Bowl and he lost in embarrassing fashion, but this guy has a track record. It's proven. And look what he's done with this team. Coach of the year in your mind?
Oh, come on.
Dallas could have had him. I mean, he
Dallas
was there.
had him right there. He was right there.
Right.
Come on. This is Quinn's doing.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, you have to give him credit.
the coach.
He runs a good program. Irrefutably.
Diana.
You want to give credit to Jaden Daniels.
I mean,
do you?
he's pretty
Right.
good.
Yes.
I
know.
don't
Don't
know.
discount whatever
Okay,
influence
so
he
Dan
had there.
Quinn has an ability to just make magical 80%
No.
quarterbacks as rookies.
No,
Okay.
Dan Quinn is
Okay.
a good coach, a good
Okay.
defensive coach who
Right.
now has a quarterback.
Right. Dan
That's all.
Quinn, that
Right.
Hail Mary, all
Right.
Dan Quinn. Yeah,
Well,
that's how they
you're
beat
trying to
Chicago
take
and ruined
credit.
Chicago's
This is not
entire
a day.
season because Dan Quinn was staring at the ball
Not a
as
day.
it flew through
That
the
was
air.
Tariq
Yeah, but
Stevenson's
let's go
fault.
back
Take
to
away
when
from
Dan
Dan
Quinn was hired. Do you remember how unsexy that was?
Yep.
Do you remember because they were going after Ben Johnson, the Detroit offensive coordinator? Everything appeared to be pointed in the direction of that happening, and then he didn't want to coach there, and that fell through. So then Washington was left scrambling, and they spoke to a bunch of coaches, and Dan Quinn was probably out of that group the biggest name, but it still wasn't having people in Washington go, oh man, this is it. This is the answer. So I kind of like the fact that he came in here with not a lot of expectations, just hope that he could build some sort of culture, and he certainly come through. And to Dan's point, like having a quarterback. I mean, isn't that the answer to everything?
Yes.
You have a quarterback, you're good. If you found the guy, he's going to make everybody look like a star. And that's what Cliff Kingsbury looks like right now. It's what Dan Quinn. Just don't mess it up.
Was there a team that you thought was going to do something to improve their roster that didn't, and that surprised you?
Yeah, the Bengals.
Really?
Because they were trying. The Bengals were trying hard. They were calling around. They're trying to improve their defense. They have belief that they can offensively make a run here specifically, but they know their defense is older. This isn't the same Bengals defense we saw in the Super Bowl a few years ago. Same coordinator, but different same players, but they're just older. So they were looking at corner. They were looking at tackle. They were trying, but they couldn't find a trade partner. I mean, I was talking to people up until like a minute before 4:00, and they were still in conversation, and they couldn't get it done, which would have been, I think, a really big story, just knowing the history in Cincinnati. They've only acquired 2 players in 53 years by the trade deadline in season. So they did get a running back yesterday, but I thought on the defensive side of the ball, they would do it. I did poke around, though, on Raiders and the Browns to just see, come on, how many calls do you get on Miles? How many calls you get on Max Crosby? And I didn't get an answer from Vegas, but I heard from people in Cleveland that no one called. They just knew Miles was not open for business. Like, they were not doing that. No matter what, that door was shut.
I've got a lot of questions, but before I keep going with Dianna, can you tell me about the state of Kornhacky? Because we thought we were coming in today to do no election decided, that it was still going to be open-ended, and we were going to go to live reports on our Kornhacky as a thread throughout the tapestry of the show, but he looks despondent. He's been pouting and muttering and staring at the floor since I got here. What's the state of Kornhacky?
Since I started talking to him this morning, just despondent. Doesn't want to talk to anybody. He seems to have some beverage in his hand. It's just, he needs help.
All right, be a professional, Kornhacky. We need you to do your job. You got to come in here and do your job. No, you got to do your job. What do you mean, no thank you? That's not the way this works.
What do you want? What do you want from me?
No lip. I don't want lip from Kornhacky. I want
Aguardiente since 3 a.m., Dan.
I want Kornhacky to do his job. I want Kornhacky can't be drinking on the job.
I am actively drinking.
Biased and you got to aspire to objectivity. You got to broadcast professionally.
Objectivity. The democracy ended, Dan.
This is
it's over.
Okay.
What do you want from me? What do you want? What do you want me doing here? Why are we doing this? There's
reporting.
No bits. There's no jokes. Why are we?
All right.
It's kind of hard to argue democracy dying when the people spoke in a loud and clear voice.
Turn down your microphone. We'll come out and do your job in a second here. But explain to me, Dianna, what I'm not understanding with the easy internet criticism of Mike Williams goes for a 5th, DeAndre Hopkins goes for a 5th, Jerry Jones gives up a 4th for Jonathan Mingo. Like, everyone's looking at that and saying, well, I've heard of the other guys. What's happening here with Mingo?
Yeah, well, Jerry and the front office there had liked Mingo coming out of the draft. I'm not going to defend his decision because I was a little stunned. He was not on my bingo board, we'll call it, for Dallas making a move. In fact, I didn't really expect Dallas to make a move. That kind of came about over the last few days where he changed his mind. And just going with Mingo, to me, just doesn't make a lot of sense, knowing what he's done in Carolina, which isn't really much. But I think this is where Jerry's had a really hard season. Because, look, you have to give them credit. They've been awesome at drafting. They're good at finding players. I don't know what this move's about, though. This doesn't make sense for a team that now has a quarterback that is potentially going to be put on IR, as Jerry revealed yesterday. And they have a lot more problems than just at receiver. And I don't necessarily believe Mingo is going to be that answer, but he obviously felt confident that this was going to be good. And for Carolina, they're winners in this, being able to get what they got in return. We knew Mingo was on the trade block. We knew that they were open to it, but I know that Carolina did not think that was going to be Dallas.
Dianna, the obvious biggest question in football, if Inter Miami does not win the MLS Cup, will Lionel Messi's season be an official disappointment?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What was the point of bringing him here? Why? Like,
Thank
what?
you.
It's just it's a waste. I'm trying to think of what the comp in football would be at this point. What would you say was the biggest? I guess that's like Kirk Cousins, right? They spent all this money to bring him to Atlanta. They got to win it. No, it's the Jets. It's Aaron Rodgers. It's Aaron Rodgers in New York. That's what it is.
Perfect.
So yeah, so I would say the same thing in Miami as I would in New York.
Thank God we changed it. You're comparing Messi to Kirk Cousins. My foot just started moving under the table in ways I couldn't control.
Well, because I wasn't looking at the superstar quality. I was thinking money. I was thinking about how much they paid him.
But
Thank you for correcting
Let's.
me.
Can we play that sound, please, of what I was describing as a nun at a Vatican area church trying to talk football in her second language of English while discussing that play at the end of the Bears-Commanders game?
The Hamari.
That is Dianna Russini trying to say Hail Mary.
Hail Mary.
Save that for me.
I speak in tongue.
In English, that is an English phrase.
The Hail Mary.
Hail Mallory.
What is that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Like Memphis.
I don't know why you said it that way. It doesn't make any sense
The
to me.
Hamari.
What the Steelers did, Diana. The Steelers get Preston Smith and Mike Williams. It is funny to see the Steelers as one of the two lost teams when none of us regard them as one of the two lost teams, even understanding Mike Tomlin's going to sprinkle some fairy dust on things and have two losses in the middle of the season.
I got Mike Tomlin for Coach of the Year right now in my mind.
Wow.
For what they're doing. Yeah, the expectation's really low. What were they going to do at the quarterback position? They've sort of figured it out. You bring in Mike Williams in hopes that, Russ chucks up some moonballs and he can contest for those. And look, Mike's coming off injury. It wasn't working in New York. Everyone there was happy he's gone. He's happy he's gone. It was a nice breakup. We saw Aaron Rodgers' reaction to Mike Williams. It wasn't working. So the fact that Pittsburgh's able to get a receiver, something that they've been in the market for 8 months, every single receiver that's been available, Pittsburgh has called for, it feels like. So they land here and look, George Pickens obviously has been their go-to guy. And so now that the fact that they've got two options, and look, if the run game is so good right now in Pittsburgh that even if Williams isn't elite or the Mike Williams that we saw once before when he was with the Chargers, I still think it gives the Steelers a really good option. And then getting Preston Smith. I reported over the weekend that the Packers were shopping him, and I couldn't believe the Green Bay Packer fan base was going crazy of like, we're trying to make a run of the Super Bowl. Why are we getting rid of one of our pass rushers? But if you saw in the game, they're not using him as much. And also contractually, it wouldn't make sense for Green Bay to keep him. So I thought from the Packers standpoint, that was a really good move for them of thinking future, but also for Pittsburgh, just to add to a defense that really carries this team. So yeah, a team that we didn't talk too much about this offseason in terms of them being potentially good. I don't think any of us had them. I think it's been pretty impressive. And the fact that they were this aggressive at the trade deadline just goes to show you what they believe in.
So Tomlin over Dan Quinn?
I hate that you guys are doing this midway through the season.
You want Dan Quinn for Coach of the Year?
Year.
Yeah. They're 7-2.
Let's go out to Kornhacky here. Kornhacky has something for us on the Steelers at the board. Stunning that something unpredictable would come out of Pennsylvania. Go ahead, Kornhacky. What do you have for us?
All right, Dan. Yeah, I guess we'll do football today. Super cool. They got Russell Wilson some help in the form of Mike Williams. They got him some help, and the thing that Russell Wilson knows is, Dan, it's not all about me anymore.
I need you to be more professional than this.
Me.
Okay, this is
That's
not
the big thing in
behavior
Pennsylvania,
from you. Okay,
Dan. We need to
All right,
help
turn his microphone
me.
off. He's not doing his job correctly. I need him to do better than that.
Yeah, he's drunk. He's been drinking whiskey by the look of the glass.
Aguardiente is more like of a celebratory drink.
Yeah,
I'm glad he switched to the brown
super
stuff.
brown, super brown, aggressive for this hour of the morning. What were the trades that you were hearing about, Diana, that you were chasing that didn't come to be? The huge, interesting gossip that didn't happen, but that you were chasing at various points.
Great
yesterday.
question, Dan.
While I had firm belief that the Carolina Panthers were not going to trade Bryce Young, I always left that door open. I was checking in all the way up to the final minute there, just knowing that it hasn't been a great ride there, knowing that it doesn't appear to be working with Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers, and knowing that there were teams around the league calling, thinking that their program could be the one to sort of resurrect his career and find the talent that we all saw at Alabama and the talent that a lot of people around the league still think he has. So that was probably the outside the box name. I was just keeping an eye on, making sure I didn't get an egg in the face, just because, it's a weird time of year when you're doing this stuff too, because you have to once again figure out who's lying, who's being open with you about what's actually truly happening. The Kansas City Chiefs were working phones, which is wild considering how good this roster is, how good the defense is. But they were in on Marshawn Lattimore. They were trying to get that done, but obviously the Saints were asking for too much for what the Kansas City Chiefs could give up. So that didn't work out. And the New England Patriots, I expected them to be sellers. I thought they were going to get rid of more guys, and they didn't. Also in New York, Azeez Ojulari was probably one of the bigger names. He's a young defender who's had a really good season this year. He'll be a free agent in the offseason. And I had many different teams asking me about him over the last week. And Joe Shane in New York, he had a big price for him. He was not moving off him unless he was really blown away. And I guess I'm trying to understand what the mindset is there in New York, because if they think they're safe because their owner told them they're safe, why are you not playing this what's smart for the future, right? Because he's going to be a free agent. So you're just keeping him for what? I know part of the reasons because they're banged up. They've got some injuries. But I thought that he would be a player that would get moved. So, going back to what I mentioned before, though, there was no big super stud name that was going to get moved. And we kind of all knew that.
Who were some of the teams that were calling about Bryce Young?
You know what? This whole thing is an official disappointment. Again,
I want to know who was calling about Bryce Young. I do.
No, we're making up. Like Marshawn Lattimore.
What do you mean?
This is just nonsense. We're talking about.
She said teams called the Carolina Panthers
Dan,
about Bryce Young.
It's so funny you say that. I was thinking about that today.
It's nothing. This is not newsworthy. We're not doing it. We're making things up. It's garbage. It's garbage.
Let's talk about something else. I'm with you. No, look, the Marshawn Lattimore move is 100% to play the Eagles, right? That's what that is. That's
Kornhacky. What do you have on Michigan? This is this trade deadline stuff. This is just garbage. We're wasting Diana's precious time asking her, what about this guy over here? Fourth round pick over there. Who was calling about Bryce Young? Oh, nothing happened on Bryce Young. Fascinating.
Dan, you know what else, Dan? The state of our democracy.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Breaking character for a second, as Jeremy, this is stupid. We shouldn't be doing bits. It's a bad day. But going back into character, hey, Detroit really needed some sacks. So they went out and got a player for a 5th and a 6th round pick. They knew they were fine on offense, Dan. They knew they were fine on the offensive side, so they got Smith. We call that an SOS around Michigan, Dan.
All right. You know what?
Did you guys see my tweet the other day?
Greg Cote, penalty, 5 minutes, me maximum.
Yeah, get out of here. You don't tell people getting in and out of characters if you're so deep like Daniel Day-Lewis that we can't tell, and you have to explain it to us because you're such a great thespian. You don't tell people that.
Where did Jeremy come from?
I can't believe it. What, he's not drinking?
That's Jeremy?
He's not drinking brown liquor in the morning at work? It's Jeremy? You're kidding.
What was your tweet?
Yeah. Hold the phone up again.
Wasn't my tweet.
A lot of emojis.
Okay.
The best part is people think that was me. Like, it's obvious someone had my phone.
Yes, you're one of the children. What age was the child that was hitting all of the emojis and just putting?
Here's the best part about it. It was Michael. He's 3.
I thought you were going to say your husband.
He would have just been like, fly, Eagles, fly.
You make him a real ape, you know that? Yeah. You make your husband a real idiot. Like, just he's just a total caveman the way that you present him.
He is. In regards to the Philadelphia Eagles, he's an idiot.
Yeah.
And in the most loving way. He guys, what you see when you're watching people at the link, that's him without the face paint though, because too good for that. But it's the same stuff. So yeah, the best part about the tweet was it's just like a bunch of like letters and emojis. He doesn't know. He can't even spell his name. But the last 4 letters is hey. So people thought that there was an actual human, like a person I could read and write tweeting that. So I get all these texts of like, hey, is everything all right? What's going on?
Like you had the Twitter equivalent of a seizure of some sort, like that you.
Is her SOS signal like blinking in Morse code, like "Help me, guys"?
Okay.
Emoji.
It's that time of year where people have insiders on they have their alerts on, right? So that's why everyone's like, "Oh my God, what is that? What does that mean? What does that mean?"
So you're saying because it's the lying season and the hot stove and everything else, you're saying that people were reading and interpreting your emojis as Diana's trying to tell us some secret information
in code,
with hearts and a duck and a butterfly and a couple of googly eyes and some tears. Okay. What else did the kids do? Did you get any good stories from the last couple of times? We haven't had any good kids stories.
How was Halloween?
Setting fire to the house or anything?
No, we're good. We're getting safer. We're potty training, so that's an experience. Halloween was good. Thanks for asking. Mm-hmm. I had a kind of an awesome experience. We're like an hour into trick or treating, and they don't really understand it. They just walk up. They barely say trick or treat. They just say hello. Joey says happy birthday to every single person. He doesn't comprehend that this is not his, this is just a thing in our house until we can figure out to teach him that it's not everyone's birthday. But it was like an hour in, and my 3-year-old goes, "Mommy, I'm tired. I want to go home." I'm like, this is the best thing you could have said to me.
Lucky you.
So it was an early Halloween for us. The kid was spent.
What was he dressed as?
He was a dinosaur. He had a full mask on. So was the other one. We put him in like a stroller, and we put the fence around it and said caution, like Jurassic Park. And he just stood behind there and just cried the whole time. So yeah, it was a good experience. It was fun.
Was your husband dressed up like Dick Vermeil?
No, he was dressed up as AJ Brown, running around. Like,
really?
Harold
No.
Wilbert Montgomery. I mean,
no, he wasn't doing any of that. He was asking me a million questions about what Philly was doing yesterday. He had some important meetings at work, and I'm thinking he doesn't answer any of my questions about life, like things like, hey, is the leaf blower coming this week? What's going? No answers. But anything from Howie, anything from Sirianni, anything from this one, that, whoever. He'll just name people that I don't even talk to, by the way.
Do you ever mess with him and just tell him something's happening that isn't?
You should.
All the time. Nice. It's my favorite hobby.
They're trading for Mahomes.
The Eagles got Mahomes.
So whenever he doesn't respond, I just try to think of anything Philly sports related, and it works every single time. By the way, the Phillies traded Bryce Harper. I can't believe it. I just spoke to him. Phone rings. Hey, I'm like, the text before was that my mom is sick and that we probably have to go over there tonight to help them. And you didn't respond. But the Bryce Harper getting traded thing got you to call me. It's a good tool. I use it.
See you later, Dianna. Good talking to you again. I will tell people that the name of the podcast is Scoop City. You should get it because she has become very popular with her podcast, All Things for Football. Thank you, Dianna. Good talking to you.
Hail Mary.
Tom Hanks has said something truly shocking. We'll get to that in a moment. Kornhacky continues to get into the brown liquor. He hasn't eaten breakfast either, and that's what he's drinking is real. So Kornhacky is, I know you get confused sometimes. You think it's Jeremy, but you don't know if it's a bit or whether it's Kornhacky and Jeremy's not even there. I know he gets so deep into the
I'm truly drinking this alcohol, Dan.
Yeah, I know you are.
There is a resemblance.
And he hasn't had breakfast.
Dan, have you noticed that 11 of the 12 teams in the college football playoff, that's my camera, the 11 of the 12 teams in the college football playoff are from red states? Have you noticed that?
I had not noticed.
You think about that recently, Dan?
We have not broken down college football enough today. Kornhacky, I don't like your attitude. You
don't like my attitude?
I don't like your attitude.
Sounds like me on a late Sunday.
How about that?
Late Sunday.
How about that? Now?
Late Tuesday or
Sunday.
Wednesday.
Greg, it sounds like you at 11 p.m. anytime I've called you over the last 25 years.
Listen to the last 10 minutes, which is our Sunday night recap from the Greg Cote show this past week.
How many beers was he
Oh, my
in?
God. Me and my mom were texting about it on Monday.
She told me, your mother. And Yeti and Christopher on the air are telling me I was drunk on my own podcast.
Yeah, because it was obvious.
It wasn't obvious until I listened to it afterwards.
But in the moment.
In the moment,
It felt great,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was fantastic.
Paul Simon.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail the show.
Wow.
That's a good one.
Paul Simon's
really
a good
good.
one.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is a good one.
Yeah.
Greg Cote is somebody who and Chris can speak to this. You know what? You recognize it on the phone. Your dad has a distinctive slur that you after 10 p.m. you know whether he's gotten into the 10th beer or not.
I've told him many times on the podcast that a Sunday night football recap when the Dolphins are on the road, scary proposition. When they're at
father's-
home, he's worked the game, so he's fine. Those road games, and he wrote a column.
Your father's bladder is something that's superhuman. It should be its own superhero.
Sepp Blatter.
Former FIFA president Sepp Blatter is
Right.
the joke you made, even
It
though
was a
it's
good one.
Well, but it's bladder with 2 T's. It's not even
Semantics. I mean, come on.
It's pronounced the same.
Chris, get the president of everyone because that was his most famous.
Could have hit different today.
Is he still in
soundbite.
charge? What's he up to?
I don't think he's in charge anymore. I think he resigned in disgrace, but there's
Yeah.
hope for him.
Not in
yet.
disgrace.
His name's Joseph Sepp Blatter. Why wouldn't he go by Joey?
Sepp is, not
Joey
a common
Blatter?
one, but
Yeah.
I
that's
like
the way to
Sepp
shorten
as
it.
Joey B.
a
Joseph?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I like you. You brought me again into the FIFA. I stay with you. You have voted for me. Although they have voted for the Prince Ali, I congratulate you. It's a good candidate. But I'm now the president of everybody. So I'm the president of everybody. There is no reticence. That's just president of the whole FIFA. Voila.
Told you that was going to hit different.
Yep.
Voila.
He got married for a third time in 2022.
Voila.
This is Blatter.
Voila.
Your bladder should be a superhero because the regularity with which you drink 10 beers before I've taken late in life here. I'm not as late in life as you are, and I will not drink much liquid after 6 or 7 p.m. because I don't want to be waking up multiple times to go to the bathroom. I don't understand how you do it. I've never understood how you do it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you exaggerate when you talk about how much beer I drink, but
I don't think I do exaggerate, actually.
you do.
Chris, do I? Because I feel like he's been a prodigious beer drinker for my entire life. That garage, that garage has thousands and thousands of beers that have been consumed.
I will say I don't think he drinks 12 beers every day. Wow. But a lot of
Thank
days.
you.
A lot of days, though.
Most days.
But it takes
No.
that to slur. That's about the 10 beer mark is about where your dad's got an amazing ability to throw down beer.
He also doesn't eat. Like on Wednesdays, I become a parent to him. Like before we go to bowling, because I know we're gonna have a couple buckets. I'm like, "Did you eat?" Like we'll go. Like sometimes I'll order food at a restaurant before bowling and order extra food and like feed my dad sliders just to get some food in his system.
Unnecessarily.
Fasting, intermittent fasting.
Yep. Yeah. Joe Blatter got married 3 times. Billy is right, but the last time was when he was 86 years old. What's the point of getting married for a third time when you're 86 years old?
There's a
mean,
cap,
what are
right?
you
Like
doing?
there's a max. Like, look, I love my wife. Let's get out in the front end right now. Not falling for this trick again. Another marriage? No, thank you.
Voila.
One and done for me. I hope
Yeah.
it works out. If
Yes.
it doesn't, one and done. We
Voila.
don't need another marriage. I don't need that.
so
Do
you're
you
saying
need that?
at no age, never mind 86.
That's
you're
I'm
just-
definitely not
you're-
80. Well, first, not to be morbid, I don't know that I'm getting to 86.
Okay,
I
you
drink a
can't
lot
do
of
that.
Coca-Cola, so I don't know.
Look what's gotten to 70 drinking 10 beers a day.
Hello.
By the way, 'tis the
Most
season.
days.
Coke cans have Santa Claus on them again, and I had a marketing
Same
idea.
Christmas again.
I had a marketing idea for Coca-Cola, and I don't think that they're gonna take it. But if they do, like they can have this one for free because I think that it's fun. I feel like Diet Coke or Coke Zero, sexy Santa, right? You put in a Santa Claus there with abs or whatever, shirt off, sexy Santa on the Diet or the Coke Zero, and then this is the one that's healthy for you.
Like that new Santa movie where J.K. Simmons plays Santa.
I'm excited about that movie. I think I want to see
Dwayne
it.
Johnson, isn't it? That's like, I saw this the other day, and I walked through the theater, and I saw this the other day. I'm like, you really? Dwayne Johnson and J.K. Simmons?
That's the one that they wrote the Vanity Fair piece on, where The Rock being late made that budget swell over $200 million.
What's it called? Like Red Santa or Red Christmas?
One.
Red One.
They're
Red
playing
One.
this game now where they just throw the word red at things, and like every action
That
movie
wins
has
today.
the word, well,
Big.
Bad name for a movie, though.
That wins big today.
Bigly.
Do you guys feel ridiculous at all
Yes.
discussing today Joel Embiid's 3-game suspension? Like things like that. Do you?
Yeah, I do. Do you want to talk about it? You threw it out there. I mean, he put his hands on it.
I just don't know. I honestly don't know. We've been fooling around a lot for the 2 hours, and I know that people expect a reprieve from me and from this show, and very often don't want at all what we give you politically around here, would prefer none of it to be anywhere around what it is that we're doing. And I have been, over the last few years, willing to pay the tax on a lot of people, especially in Miami, wandering away from whatever their lifelong loyalties have been, because they don't find me to be representative of what the politics of Miami are now more than ever, more than I've ever seen, as my people have spoken very loudly and chosen a candidate that I view as dangerously anti-freedom. The only kind of freedom that I believe that Trump cares about is keeping himself out of jail, and now he has done it successfully in a way that leaves me feeling very alone in my own city and surrounded in my own city. So I don't know the tone to take on today, even though we've been fooling around plenty, because I am legitimately saddened. I'm wounded by what has happened today and last night in this country, that so many people think that that's a solution to their problems.
And no one thinks Vanderbilt is any good.
Yeah.
I mean,
And speaking of Joel Embiid,
He put his hands on a journalist, so you can't establish a precedent where that goes with impunity, no matter how gratuitous. And I appreciated Jamel's perspective on this, and Bomani did some stuff on there. It felt extra gratuitous. So I understand Joel Embiid having a problem with it, having not been privy to that locker room and what is the general understanding is as to what third rail topics are regarding that player. But he certainly took offense, but you can't be putting your hands on somebody.
A 3-game suspension doesn't sound as bad. Like, they could give him the exact same punishment and phrase it differently. It's $1 million fine is what he got, which sounds a lot more extreme than a 3-game suspension, because his salary, the 3 games, is going to be over $1 million. And by the way, and like, I don't want to poke the bear here, but like, probably going to play those 3 games anyway. So like, the suspension is not really a punishment. It's the $1 million fine that he's getting. And if I wouldn't have suspended him to 3 games. I would have said like, hey, you got $1 million fine for, putting your hands on a journalist. And then I think that adds to the severity of it, and you kind of send the message.
you should make him play the 3 games. That adds to the severity of it. But
that should be the punishment.
Get a little calf strain. Here's 3 games.
I love that.
Enjoy your calf strain.
You have to play.
Put it on the poll. Should Joel Embiid's punishment be that he has to play the 3 games?
Because that will quickly turn into 15 games.
Yeah, and 48 minutes each night, by the way. But in all seriousness, I think the degree of the altercation matters. Now, I don't. Is there a video of it? Because I haven't seen it.
There hasn't been video.
Oh, if there were video, it would be all the worse.
Well,
because generally speaking, when we see athletes put their hands on anybody, or when we see video of anything that you've read about tends to get worse.
I mean, that guy, though, he's 7 feet tall, and he's putting his hands on a reporter.
But I do think there's a difference, though, between somebody, poking me with an index finger and somebody shoving me where I lose my balance.
It was reported as shoving no punch. Shoving no punch is how it was reported.
I'm with my dad though. Like, was it a poke in the why?
It's a big
difference. Why'd you bring that in there? Because if that's what it was, I'm kind of with you.
Because I don't know.
I don't think of a shove with a finger.
Can you shove someone with a finger? Yeah.
Well, you can, but I don't think. Well,
Hurt
if
my
Joel
finger.
does it to a reporter with a finger, the reporter probably moves off his stance, right?
Physically off of his stance, or
Yeah,
off of
if
his
he did it to a
opinion?
teammate, well, off his stance.
Yes,
is what I'm
Joel
talking about.
Embiid is very strong, yes, but I don't think we're talking about a finger here. A single finger.
Maybe two.
wouldn't
Yeah,
have
what
been-
about two?
Two fingers can do
like a
some damage.
solid.
Have you not
Index
seen,
middle, I
Have you
mean.
not seen Joel Embiid play? If you lay a finger on him, he goes flying. So he knows exactly how powerful that can be.
The idea that it would be over the line, I don't believe is up for dispute, but I also believe the line on cruelty has just generally moved, right? So while Bomani and Jamel are longing for a different time and whatever it is locker room decorum, I don't know that Joel Embiid or the league is making any distinction between this is a reporter from a serious newspaper outlet that has mainstream credibility, or this is a blogger who says mean things about me, who also has locker room access on certain occasions under a different set of media rules as to what's allowed in the locker room. I know this has been a very difficult thing for old school public relations people to handle in a new changing journalistic market.
Who's who?
Well, who is who and what's allowed on decorum and decency, because the journalism standard, has always been you don't do this particular personal thing to a Joel Embiid unless you're like Skip Bayless or Jay Mariotti, who doesn't actually then go into the locker room after doing that, so doesn't risk the confrontation, because that used to be something that journalists had to go in there and account for what it is that they had written.
Give the person credit for going in there. I mean,
well, but
terrible
there
column,
are a lot of people, the way that the discourse around this has hardened, it's not just First Take, it's not just sports radio. The internet is cruel.
Yeah.
The line has moved on what is the common decency that Joel Embiid deserves to be treated with. You're not a traditional journalist. You come from a front office, old-timey front office place where this would have never happened.
What's this that would have never happened?
That the columnist wouldn't write this about the family, and then what would happen after that would not be the reporter putting the hands on the columnist.
So let's start with the columnist, Marcus Hayes. He's not a young puppy. This guy has been in that market for a long time. You mentioned Jay Mariotti. You mentioned Skip Bayless. Peter Vesey would be another one. There have been these columnists since the beginning of time. Guys who were rabble-rousers, a little bit prickly, a little poking, and crossing lines at times. You mentioned those guys wouldn't have been in the locker room afterwards. As I understand it, because Joel was so upset by this, Sixers PR, I think, did the right thing there and say, hey, let's get these people together and clear this out. Because afterward, he wrote another column, by the way, where and I don't know if you guys talked about this with Jamel. First of all, the line where he said all that stuff, he had removed it because of the public backlash. Well before seeing Embiid in that locker room. Because of the public backlash, he removed that line, that lead out of his column. So then he wrote another one a few days later saying that Embiid let the city down. And that's where Embiid in the press conference says this Marcus whoever guy talking about let the city down, and he starts listing all the injuries and all that stuff. So clearly this thing with Marcus Hayes had bothered Embiid. PR had sought to bring them together. I don't think it was meant to be in the locker room. I think the guy went into the locker room not expecting to see Embiid, and Embiid starts yelling at him about stuff, and like Jamel said, that's normal, dude. Every person I know who's been a beat writer or a columnist has had that experience of an athlete yelling at them, right? So it seems like Embiid just wanted to get it off his chest. The line that seemed to set it off to cross over from just yelling at him to shoving him was Embiid saying, I don't care what reporters say anyway. And Marcus Hayes, in a moment where he could have diffused the situation.
Clearly you do care.
And by the way, hell of a line. Look, hey, man.
Yeah, good line.
It's a great line, and it's because it's true. It's true. We wouldn't be here if you didn't care what reporters say. Not saying that what Marcus wrote was appropriate or that Joel was wrong to be angered or upset by it. I'm just saying you can't then say, I don't care what anyone says, because if you didn't care, I wouldn't even be here. So Marcus
But that's
says,
what got him shoved.
That's the escalation, yes. That's what got him shoved. I don't think Embiid had the idea that when I see this dude, I'm going to smack him or anything like that. I don't think he had that thought in his head. But you're already upset. It's heightened. and then this dude basically taunts you, that at that point he kind of lost control.
I think two things are worth noting. One, if you're a columnist, this is not bad for business. Being on the end of an
Zion shoe
altercation.
situation.
This is not
Certainly,
bad for business.
If he continues covering that team in that locker room and doesn't turn this into something else, isn't it bad for business? Because
it depends on how he handles it.
Hear Greg out. Hold on a second.
I will hear him out, but the currency can't be so cheap that it doesn't matter how you get the attention. All that matters is you get the attention.
It's that cheap these days.
But my
Dan.
immediate rebuttal is, hasn't he just made his job a lot more difficult
Yes,
on
he
himself?
has. But the controversy is not a bad thing if you're a columnist. Okay, it can be good for business, good for the brand, depending on what you want your brand to be. The other point I would make is that nowadays, where the old school journalist is less and less, and the quasi journalist, the blogger, whatever, who's there, he might love this. He might want to instigate it. It is good for some business.
Okay.
If you're the guy who is getting the viral story because of this.
Okay, but so may I, though? Do you guys not understand how this becomes provocative for the sake of provoking? Like how it is that it's just gratuitous if this is how we're going to do it. And don't make it just some blogger. Let's make it, there's all sorts of new media out there, all sorts of new media doing it well in a democratic meritocracy landscape. I'm happy that all sorts of new media is allowed in the locker room, but there has to be a standard on, you can't just go in there to provoke someone so that you can get the provoking reaction, and then that's good for business. That's not a good way for anybody to do this.
Dan, you keep saying new media. This guy's not new media.
I know, but I'm just talking about a lowered. Yeah, forgive me. Okay. He's reacting to an old-time columnist, but I'm reacting to a general reduction of a standard that now involves players pushing journalists when that's not what it used to be. That's awfully rare. An athlete putting their hands on a journalist.
Sure, yes, that's rare. Sorry, Greg. That's rare. Of course, the crossing that line is rare, but when like we have to take into account the facts. The facts is this guy was legacy media, Philadelphia Inquirer, the number one paper. This guy's a columnist, and a columnist who's been writing for a very long time. I just told Mike he was writing articles like this about Allen Iverson. So this isn't like, hey, this is where the media is going. People are being rabble-rousers. Let me try my hand at this. This is a guy who's, like I said, the Jay Mariotti, the Skip Bayless, the Peter Vesey provocateur role is not something new to this guy, right? The question is, what is the impact, right? Because the impact, I talked about this on Vinny Goodwill's podcast, right? The impact is this, the polarization of media, where it's either, hey, I'm going to be a provocateur and talk and get a rise out of people, and Greg's right, it pays the bills. It absolutely, that's your brand, it pays the bills.
He's right. I mean, but this, forgive me, because this is the part where it is that I'm objecting. You're right that this is old media, but do you realize that what Greg is voicing there, it's the only way for old media to keep up.
To stay relevant.
If the standard that he's describing is the columnist has to provoke, that's good for business. It's all that's left for the columnist that we've reduced the standard so much.
Not to put words in Greg's mouth, but Greg said if it's good for the brand. That guy's brand, yes. If you're a different columnist, not so much. But the problem is the polarization, because on the one hand you got this, on the other hand you've got glad-handing. Everything is awesome. You're the best ever. Oh, nothing wrong. Like it's the chuckle fest, right? It is, and so not objective in any way. Nothing's wrong. Nothing to see here. And so these are the two kind of see a lot, especially for younger media people, right? The old guard or whatever. But the people who are breaking in, they're either I got to talk shit and get a reaction, or I got to be everybody's friend and it's not his fault. And there's just a void of just objective reporting, objective opinion work. And when it does happen, oftentimes it's misconstrued by the subjects that, it's another provocateur. Like, no, sometimes they're saying something that's actually true.
I need to make clear that the column in this case provoked Embiid because it referred to a brother who had passed away, right? Joel Embiid
and
a
his
brother.
son. He made it personal by bringing family into it.
Okay, and that's a line that was crossed, and that is something that something has to be sacrosanct. And for me, I'm never going to write a critical column on an athlete that uses as some sort of an excuse the fact that he has been through this personal tragedy.
I'm going to let this go after this, but I want to ask you guys as it relates to where it is that we draw these lines. It's subjective for everyone, and I would say in the coarsening of the general discourse and where it is that the athlete has less humanity than he used to have, even as perhaps young fawning media applauds Joel Embiid and he's grown up in a different sort of social media age where he gets the extremes. It's either calling him all sorts of names or just universal "you're famous" applause because he is a social media athlete. He enjoys the villainy. He's been uncommonly comfortable sort of going back and forth with people because he doesn't mind going into Madison Square Garden as a villain. The thing that I'm finding strangest about this is go ahead and tell me all the other times you guys have. You'll be able to find certain examples, but you won't have many of an athlete putting their hands on a journalist and getting $1 million fine because they physically handled a journalist.
Jim Rome, Chris Everett. He kept going, Chris Everett. That's one of the moments. He did it on TV. It wasn't even where their cameras rolling. We were on television. We were watching it, and it happened. So that's the number one example.
Helped his career. I mean, big time.
Absolutely, because, again, that was his brand.
Yep.
Dan, I think the more concerning thing to me is the number of people who are saying, I can't believe Joel Embiid got punished. I'm like, what? Like, even Joel said, as he's yelling at this dude, I don't care what the consequences are. Meaning, if I cross that line, I do it willingly and full knowledge of what's going to happen to me. And for people to say after that, I don't think he should have got suspended or anything. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's the part where people see like a carte blanche. Well, he said something about his brother. That's not an acceptable response. Violence is not an acceptable response other than violence being beget upon you.
But that's not for you to decide. That's for Joel Embiid to decide.
No.
I mean,
violence is not.
No, he said, I'm willing to take the fine. I'm willing to take the penalty. I'm going to push this guy.
Stugotz, we're speaking the same language. Yes, you're right. I'm going to take the fine. I'm going to take the suspension, the penalty. I'm talking about people saying, I can't believe he got penalized.
Right.
The place that I would just stop you guys on is there shouldn't be a different standard for professionalism for Joel Embiid than there is for the journalist. It can't be good line in the locker room when you've escalated something to provoking Joel Embiid. I'm fine for both of them being held to a professional standard, but it can't be good for somebody's business and bad for somebody else's when the journalist is in there stirring up the provocation. Like, the standard of professionalism has to be the same for both of them.
Absolutely.
I agree.
But it's kind of a byproduct, right? That like Greg said, that this might be his most read column ever. It's not. I don't believe
saying
that.
You only make it worse when you make it that. Forgive me again for putting new media in here, but when I make sports debate television that, and when I make the old columnists like Cote, how are you going to keep up with the young people? How are you going to keep up with the diminished standard on professionalism that makes it okay to provoke Joel Embiid, makes it okay to have a good line in a locker room where Joel Embiid is already emotional and escalated, and we're trafficking in dead brother stuff? Like, it's not just provocation, it's this deeply personal a provocation.
I'm curious, Greg, what was the closest you felt like an athlete was going to put hands on you because of something that you wrote?
When I covered the Dolphins full time in the early 90s for a couple of years, there was a post-game altercation on the road somewhere. I don't even remember where it was, where a linebacker started yelling at me, and it never came to fisticuffs because the PR guy at the time was very diligent and right there. But it happens occasionally.
I'm picturing Brian Cox.
That's
terrifying.
exactly who I was thinking.
It's a
Yes.
possibility.
Well, you kept the name out for some reason. You didn't mention the name.
Yeah,
classy.
it's been 30 years ago. I could say a name, but I would only be about 80% sure I was right.
You forgot.
But
Hold
the
on.
point is, it happened.
Logan Roy almost hit him?
You forgot the name of who it was?
Yeah, it's not that uncommon.
30 years ago.
Did he have the neck guard on during the altercation?
Were you ready to go? Like what? Like
Yeah, you said
had
it
gotten
didn't come to fisticuffs.
But had it come to
It
fisticuffs?
wouldn't have been
was
your
a-
fisticuffs.
Were you saying,
it
"Hold
was
me
a
back"?
yelling. It was a
Well, how do
loud.
you know?
You're like,
altercation.
hold me
Young
back.
Greg Cote.
How
Did
happened?
you yell back?
Look, in this case, if Marcus Hayes shoves Joel Embiid, Marcus Hayes' employer is going to suspend him. Okay? There was an Indianapolis reporter who got into a cheeky exchange with Caitlin Clark. He was suspended for a short time and then banned from covering that team for a short time. There are consequences on both sides, and you're entirely right. It can't just be the athlete who's penalized. The journalist has to be held to his standard as well.
Fisticuffs involve the fists of you and others, right? When you describe something as fisticuffs, it means that the linebacker was involving his fists and your fists,
No.
correct?
I've got Hal Habib holding my dad back.
If I used fisticuffs, I misspoke. It was him yelling at me.
Right.
Okay, but
But
only
you felt like it was close.
Did anyone have
I
to
mean,
step in?
only he yes, he says that, but
Did
only
you take a step forward?
No, I don't remember.
Neutral? Like you
you
just
did.
didn't move?
he
Greg,
doesn't remember
You
the
can't remember the
linebacker.
name.
Greg, listen to me. It's 30 years later. You said, I stepped up.
Yeah.
I stepped
Right.
up and said, go ahead. I'll
Yes.
even let you get the first shot.
I dared him. Yeah.
I think, can you look this up? I believe that I've had asked this question before, that Will McDonough in the Patriots locker room did hit a defensive back and left him crumpled in a clothing hamper.
You have to cut that guy right after, right?
I'm pretty
I mean,
sure you can find me the details of the fight where the reporter actually won the fight in the Patriots locker room.
I'm going to text Ryan McDonough right now, and I'm going to ask him, did your dad punch a linebacker in the locker room?
A defensive back. I believe.
1979, he did indeed do it. It was Raymond Claiborne.
Wow.
So Greg Cote can't remember. Will McDonough certainly remembers that from 1979.
Will
Greg-
McDonough's not with us anymore.
The late Will McDonough. I get $50 from somebody
it's a
for keeping
$50
him
fine.
alive, even though he's dead. No, I get.
Is that how we're doing it now?
I
Really?
like that.
I mean,
Yes.
you're
Abraham
keeping
Lincoln.
him alive. I mean,
But in that locker room in 1979, Will McDonough remembered when he was alive punching Raymond Claiborne. Greg Cote does not remember the linebacker. I remember when a physical confrontation in a locker room scared me. I remember the participants. I shouldn't have been laughing. I remember all the details of being in a Denver Broncos locker in the Denver Broncos Dolphin locker room at a Broncos game in Denver because I was that scared of laughing at an inappropriate time, and O.J. McDuffie was furious about it.
Wow. Wait, okay, so
Wow.
give us details. Give us context.
No, I
here.
was just scared because he was escalated, and I did think it was going to escalate to him being physical, not me being physical.
fisticuffs? Or?
No, fisticuffs have to involve both parties. I don't think it's fisticuffs if it's only one person's fists.
So he was yelling at you
Yes.
for something that you wrote.
For laughing in the locker room after a loss. I
Oh,
was
that's
laughing.
it? You walked in the locker room, they lost, they're morose. You had a chuckle,
Yeah.
and he was like, how dare you laugh in here?
Well, he was mad about other things I'd also written.
Stacking.
But
Yeah.
yes, that was the moment that got him angriest, is that in the middle of how much they cared, I was being careless.
Yeah, you don't do that.
Dan, you know what you were missing right there? A great line like Marcus Hayes. If you had one of those, mwah.
Yeah.
I believe I was also mouthy in that circumstance.
Oh,
really?
Wait, okay, what did you say?
Oh.
What was your
More than a
line?
chuckle.
I
Wow.
don't remember the line, but I shouldn't have.
What
I
are you,
was
Greg Cote?
I
I mean-
wasn't happy with him telling me how to behave in his locker room.
Now, in fairness to Will McDonough, Claiborne had this coming because Claiborne poked Will McDonough in the eye first.
One finger or two.
And then he leveled him.
And-
One. I believe it was one. An index finger. Yeah.
Should've done this move.
And he was snapping and bumping into a bunch of writers. So Will McDonough kind of was just like, hey, there's no need for that. And then he got poked in the face, and he reacted through 2 punches, and he ended up in a laundry cart.
Stanley Morgan.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Dan,
Great receiver, by
That's
the
a
way.
great one.
Yeah.
when you say you were mouthy, did you say something along the lines of, he says, hey, stop laughing? Like, hey, I didn't get my ass beat out there. Did you say something like that?
I don't think it was. I don't remember the details. I just claim that I remembered all of the details while not
fights
remembering.
are you guys getting into that you don't remember the details of athletes getting into fights with you?
I didn't remember my retort. I'm remembering who was mad and why he was mad, and it was not somebody that I wish to be trifling with because I've told the story before when he was fighting with 320-pound Daryl Gardner, who nobody fought with. He went to his car to go get a gun in the practice facility parking lot. Well, it's not someone I wanted angry at me.
To be fair, Dan, they were on the road, so I don't think he could have gotten a gun.
Thank you for that fairness.
It was important.
Not how I was thinking at the time.
Wait, that's right. John Morant had his gun in Denver. That's right. Never mind, Dan. You did the right thing.
You guys made the one finger push of Joel Embiid a shove, but the one finger poke of Raymond Claiborne a Three Stooges
To the
move.
eye is totally different, man. It is. I mean, it hurts.
You don't poke the eye.
You guys made it a Three Stooges move of poking him in the eye.
Roddy Piper would do it with the thumb, and it'd be it would stage his comeback. He'd initiate tons of offense off of that one move.
Do you flop if you get poked by Joel Embiid?
1,000%. What do you think?
Yes.
Early retirement.
I show up the next day to the practice facility with one of those neck braces.
Yeah.
Same. And a lawyer.
I'm with you.
Yep.
I will get to the shocking thing that Tom Hanks has said in a moment, but let's check in with a despondent and kind of drunk Kornhacky here. What do you have for us as an update on a bit that has gone awry that was supposed to be fun today that is instead sopping in alcohol and depression?
Well, before I bring Steve Kornhacky back in here, Dan, just Jeremy here for a second. You're sure you don't want to have a conversation about how the Electoral College is essentially a form of voter suppression because it forces the Democrats to go more right, leaving Democrats unmotivated to show up and thus tens of millions of voters not showing up to vote in this election, or how Latin men swung so far to the right and thus impacted this election, including here in Miami-Dade County because they were motivated by misogyny and racism? No? All right, Steve Kornhacky is back. So we want to have, this is right here.
Penalty, 2 minutes, rambling.
All right, Jeremy will go to the penalty box in just a second. Kornhacky's back. We're gonna have this is Lattimore country right here,
get out of here.
And then they're really making moves in the middle of the country right here, and over here on the West Coast they think they're fine. So if you look at it, we can just FML.
Major penalty on the ice, 5 minutes for rambling.
He was up in that mark.
I wasn't rambling. It was everything's fine with me. I'm doing fine. You're not fine. You're bad. You're not doing okay. Everything's bad with you. Well, it's fine.
I know he's off because he would have done wordplay with awry.
Mm-hmm. Billy, do you have a Bet the House this week? It's still undefeated, and it's as close as I wish to come to politics the remainder of the show. Can we do
forever?
A Bet the House? No, just today.
Oh,
just
dude.
Today.
Man.
Forever?
Come on.
You wanted to
we
do
get the
forever?
So close, Mike.
Let's get the message.
What
do you say?
You want to do forever?
Let's just, come on. Bunch of dudes hanging out, talking sports.
So many dudes.
So many dudes. And I don't know if you watched last night, but we're in charge now.
Yeah, dudes are in charge. Yeah. That is what happened.
Men.
That's not the chant for today.
I don't know about that.
Really?
Let's not
Well,
do
we
that.
could squeeze in a
Boo
reproductive rights, but that seems popular still.
Boo men. What is the Bet the House imaging that we have this week? I bet the House remains undefeated somehow.
I'm a little nervous about this one, if I'm going to be honest with you. We have one for next week, and then we realized, it's a bye week, so it's next week, not this week.
What are you nervous about? That you're going to not be undefeated anymore?
Yeah, it's 3-0 right now, Bet the House, so this is a big game, and, it's a time that you reach out to friends, and you say, hey, can you help us out here? Because we looked at the calendar wrong, and some other people didn't get back to us as we were expecting. So we thought we had a big fish on the hook for this one.
Wow.
We thought we had the Speaker of the House from the state of Utah, but that didn't end up panning out. So.
All right, so what did pan out?
What a sell.
What did pan out?
Fish,
Okay,
man.
so we almost got the Speaker of the House from
Yeah.
Utah.
We got canceled on?
Okay.
Did you watch what happened on The Daily Show? You know how I knew everything was going sideways last night? Fetterman canceled on Jon Stewart 30 seconds before his hit.
We also got left on red by who I described as a dream guest for this segment, George Santos.
All right, let's see what we've got
God.
here.
It's time to bet. The house set it Representative in the city. Representatives representing the House of Representatives. This week's guest from the great state of Vermont, friend of the show, Senator Peter Wells. We got a big one this weekend with championship implications in the Patriot League. It's the Holy Cross Crusaders and the Lehigh Mountain Hawks. Peter Wells, who you got?
Well, you know, I don't stray outside of the East, so for me it's Holy Cross.
This is not a good use
Patriot
of anybody's
League.
time.
The Crusaders.
Wait till next week, Dan. Big get.
Oh, really?
Billy has said with a straight face to my face that he is never trying to annoy me.
That's true.
It's not true.
It is true.
Billy, you
I'm
were
trying to
when
have
you were
fun.
under the blankets
If it annoys you, what are
in
we
your
gonna do?
house, when you were under the blankets, fearing that you were waking up your family, just
Yeah.
making all sorts of noises into your computer equipment.
Yeah.
It is not because you weren't hell bent on annoying me.
Why would that annoy you? I'm just trying to. I feel like the country needs us today and want to smile, so I'm trying to deliver some smiles.
Mm-hmm. Just
like for example,
inefficient. Can't
Dan,
they be efficient
okay,
smiles?
Dan, if you outside and you get sunburn, the sun didn't wake up to a sunburn you. You know what I mean? Like you just got sunburned. Like I'm not waking up to annoy you. I'm waking up to bet the House Senate of Representatives.
So it's on Dan.
I'm not saying that. I'm just
Tom Hanks has said that the worst age to be is 35 years old. And I think it might be the best age to be. Like I think more people.
Well, it's not the
would vote.
best age to be.
I think more.
He
people.
has good rationale here.
All right,
Dan.
let's hear what Tom Hanks has to say.
You see this cool technology where you de-age. Was there an age where you're like, damn it, I'm good with this? Take me right here. Take me back.
No. Look, I'm 68 years old. The hardest for us was when we were playing 35. That time where your metabolism stops, gravity starts tearing you down, your bones start wearing off. You stand differently. I think I'm in better shape now.
You look great. I was going to say.
Because
good.
You know why? Because my kids are grown up, I'm getting decent exercise, and I can eat right. You can't do that when you're 35. Life is such a burden.
Everybody needs to get on your plan right now.
Oh, no, dude, I'm just doing what my 68 years old type 2 diabetes, just maintaining the temple, baby. That's all I'm trying to do.
Maintain the temple.
He's so right. My back hurts. My ankle hurts. I mean, I feel like the eating unhealthy. That's just on me. I'm not going to blame 35 for that, but he was speaking to me there.
What an ass kisser of an interviewer.
I mean, that's a terrible age that he's nominating for the worst age. Don't you believe? Put it on the poll, Juju, at Le Batard Show.
Is that Kevin Frazier?
35 years old. 35 years old. Best age
regrets that.
Or worst age, 35 years old. I don't feel like anybody listening to this thinks that's the worst age.
It was pretty bad, if you remember. Well, I remember when I was 35. Not a great time. Come to think of it, 39's kind of.
Yeah, but Dan has never had kids. I mean, that's what Tom Hanks is talking about is you can't eat healthy because you're just eating whatever you give your kids. Like, it is a tough age, yeah.
It is tough.
Yes.
I saw the beginning of Tom Papa's most recent stand-up special, and all he's talking about is how thrilling it is to get the kids the hell out of the house and no longer have the responsibility and have a martini at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because you can.
Counting down the days, Dan.
Stugotz, I do not know if you like this. I'm not going to say it's a recent trend, but a lot of actors are getting chances to direct movies. And Anna Kendrick just did her first directing role, and she did a great job with a horror movie on Netflix called Woman of the Hour. And it's sort of, I would say, the same way that Get Out was a horror movie from the perspective of black people to live with racism. What Anna Kendrick has done with Woman of the Hour is basically made a horror movie, which is just what it's like to live as a woman amid danger everywhere, where one guy happens to be a serial killer, but everywhere in the movie you are left with the imprint, even if you're a man, especially if you're a man, oh, what a horror it must be like to live as a woman surrounded by danger at all times, with men potentially being violent if you rebuff their advances in any way. It's not a movie I have seen. The way that I saw Get Out, which was a movie where racism was the horror, this was a movie that I was watching and I'm like, oh, the horror is just being a woman, and especially in this America that you wake up to today, this morning, where it seems like the world is against a woman.
I think you explained it well. And you told me that she's got a new horror movie out on Netflix. You texted me that and I watched it. I'm like, that's not a horror movie. Thriller, suspense, maybe. But when you present it as such, yeah. My takeaway from the movie, and truthfully, I have a deeper appreciation now after seeing your perspective on it, is I thought the perks of being a director, I didn't really see where her character fit in. I thought there were plenty of compelling characters that were actually victims in that movie, and not to give things away, she's on a game show in which one of the serial killer that's featured that has many victims that are highlighted throughout the picture is one of the contestants on this dating show. And I thought it was kind of a weird story to tell. Out of all the people to focus on, we're focusing on this near victim rather than the actual victims. But I guess that's a good connection point in terms of the fear. And when I watched it, I was like, well, thankfully that's from a bygone era.
One of the things that was interesting about it, Stugotz, and there are a few movies out. I don't know if the Penguin classifies now as horror. It certainly classifies as dark. Speak No Evil is another horror movie that seems to be very well done.
I feel like a horror movie has to have someone wearing a mask or something. Like there has to be someone who just, walks around and murders the entire town.
Yeah, jump scares. Because there were jump scares in Get Out. There are no jump scares in this Anna Kendrick film. No, the Penguin is not remotely close to a horror, and I will stop the internet from being so mean to you. He didn't know what he was saying. It's just dark.
How many people need to get murdered in small towns for you to think, you know what, let me just move over a town? Because you have these tiny towns where there's a serial killer and it goes on for years and years, and everyone's just like, okay, well, I'm just gonna stay here and hopefully I don't get murdered. Pretty Little Liars, perfect example. A was there killing people for years. Never figured out who it was. Well, we did at the end, but not great ending.
So your solution is you just move one town over?
Yeah.
Why not a new county, a new state?
Well, you can, but you're going to do the bare minimum, right. I guess. Just move over a town. Unless it's Ravenswood. That was a whole spinoff that didn't work out.
Sydney tried that in Scream.
Didn't work out?
It didn't work out. The killer kept following her.
Really?
Right. Yeah.
You got to go a couple
one killer.
Well, that's a Sydney problem, right?
No, if the killer wants you, the killer will get you.
Be told. It seemed like a problem with her mom.
Well, but then, I haven't seen it, so pardon me, but no, I haven't seen Scream.
You haven't seen any of the Screams?
None of them.
Yeah, she tries
I
to
saw
move.
Scary Movie.
Wait a second,
goes off the grid.
But if Sydney moves, then doesn't the killer move with Sydney? In which case, you're a hero to the town for leaving.
Different killers each.
Really?
Yeah.
With the same mask?
With the same fixation and mask.
Sydney?
That's confusing.
Yeah.
So Billy, you heard, what's your favorite scary movie? And
I
you're
knew
like,
of
oh,
it.
That's a good question. You didn't even think about it. Like, oh, this is like a.
No, I knew of it, but I was look. This may come as a surprise to some of you. This happened in 1996. At 9, Billy Gill wasn't looking into being scared. The world scared him enough. He wasn't looking for extra scares via the cinema.
I don't see you as being much of a horror movie guy in general.
I mean,
who would be?
Yeah, thank you, Greg.
There's a lot of good ones. There's a lot of good ones out.
It's a genre that does pretty well.
I watched a scary movie last night.
Scary movies, in my opinion, and people won't like this, it's a phase, right? It's, you're a sophomore, junior, senior in high school, maybe through sophomore year in college, and it's like, oh, look how brave I am. I don't get scared of the scary movie. You go with a bow and you kind of try to impress them, put the arm around. Hey, I'll protect you. And then you kind of grow out of that phase, right? And it's like, why do I need to see Saw 16? Like, how many people are going to cut their limbs off to get out of this entrapment from Jigsaw?
15 wasn't enough. I mean,
I'm surprised that the horror movie genre does still endure in a way that is not conquerable.
You know why? Because it's cheap to make. They're cheap to make,
You're right.
and they make money. Yeah. Like that's the only reason why we keep seeing horror movies. It's not because there's a great appetite for this art form. It's just literally economics.
Yeah, and it's a great art form to make a budget-friendly film for. I think you could argue we're kind of in a horror suspense / thriller type of resurgence. Late Night with the Devil, The Substance. These are movies.
That's a good one too.
These are movies that are made on smaller budgets. Terrifier was a great box office story in that it became the #1 movie in America, despite the previous two not having true theatrical releases. And the stuff that they're making is really good. You mentioned Speak No Evil, tremendous film. There's this new movie with Hugh Grant that's coming out that's produced by A24, which is a taste-making studio, called Heretic, and that's being called maybe the greatest A24 film ever. And they've totally been a part of this renaissance when it came to the genre.
Enough with A24.
I'm with you.
Enough.
It's annoying.
I love A24 films.
So do I.
Oh, we're just gonna put this weird filter on it, and then everyone's gonna think it's art. Get out of here.
They make a lot of good movies.
But they do use filters.
Terrifier, explain to me how it is that that's become popular where there's 3 of them now and I didn't know. I thought I heard of Terrifier 2 before I'd heard of Terrifier. Explain to me what's happening with that movie.
It's just really gratuitous, gross practical effects. Your typical slasher, and the scary movies that were like shown at grindhouses back in the day. Really a throwback.
A
to
legitimately scary character.
Like a boogeyman,
a spindly character that is going to cut you.
We've had good suspenseful movies. The boogeyman has kind of fallen by the wayside. Usually you just revive some old IP, which is why they're still making Screams, still making Halloweens. This is the first intellectual property that tries to create a new slasher, and they've done so successfully. And you watch the movie, it's gross. It stays with you because of what you've seen, but it has its audience. I enjoyed it.
Do you guys have a strategy for scary movies? Sorry for asking.
Well, in the movie theater, when I don't know what to expect and I'm not in the comfort of my home, I cover my ears sometimes.
I try to go in and laugh. I tell myself I'm just going to laugh at how ridiculous it is, because if I laugh, then I can't get scared. So like people will be freaking out in the theater, like and it's the exorcism of Emily Rose or whatever. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the head's like spinning around, like there's like blood coming out. I'm like and then people look at me like I'm a sicko, and they're like, "Why are you finding this funny?" It's like, because I'm scared.
I did find Terrifier 3 funny.
Huh? Did you know Anthony Perkins made $25,000 for doing Psycho?
Yeah, Hitchcock.
That's how you do. I'm telling you, it costs like $100,000 to make that movie.
Chris Cote just looked at his
father. You pay Perkins $25,000. You buy a machete. You're done. I mean,
Chris Cote just looked at his dad, who all of a sudden rose up and got involved in the conversation. And the reason he rose up and got involved in the conversation is because you were mentioning a movie from 1968.
Yes.
In the middle of this conversation, I thought to myself, what would be the actual last horror movie that Greg Cote went to? Because Greg Cote does not strike me as someone who wants to feel fear at a movie theater or even while watching anything in entertainment.
Right.
Many people don't, and so I just simply assumed that Greg Cote hadn't seen a horror movie since about the 70s or 80s.
Right. No, I actively avoid horror movies, and I don't think they've made a good one since Al Hitchcock. The big two are Psycho and The Birds.
Yep.
The Boyds.
The Birds is such a ridiculous movie.
It's great. Low budget.
I'm scared of birds, so it always kind of resonated with me. Right. You mentioned Anthony Perkins. His son, Oz Perkins, actually directed one of these films that is credited with this new golden era of suspense horror films, Longlegs, which was a great performance by Nicolas Cage. That was actually directed by Anthony Perkins, his son.
Psycho was made in 1960.
Thank you.
Al Hitchcock, a sick pup, right? Like, you imagine.
Put it on the poll,
you don't go
please,
to picnics
Juju,
with Al Hitchcock.
At Le Batard Show. Al Hitchcock, a sick pup, right?
Pup, yeah.
He was a big
not
man.
a puck. Yeah.
I want to leave you with this, and I'm a renowned movie expert, as you guys know.
Mm-hmm.
I think directing a horror film is probably the easiest genre. I think the horror film...
It's hard to get the gore right.
I don't know.
No,
not in 1960.
Yeah,
for my money.
just kill, right?
Yeah.
Put Terrifier
kill.
up on the screen there. Terrifier is terrifying. This is a good character. The tiny hat helps him a great deal.
Lovely hat.
The blood on the face, the eyebrows that are painted on with some sort of small pen.
Hole in the nose.
The giant teeth as well.
That's not a hole. That's just a dot.
Looks like a hole.
It's not a hole in the nose. It's not a hole in the mask. It's just a dot.
Yeah.
Jordan Schultz is with us. He's Fox Sports NFL Insider. He's co-host of Why Is Draymond Green Talking About Football, which is a good question.
Do you think Jordan Schultz knows who Al Hitchcock is or the movie Psycho?
I don't know. We can ask him here as he joins us. But you'd agree that Terrifier is terrifying. This is a good horror character. Nobody would dispute this. Jordan, welcome to the show. Who are the best of the horror characters? Are you a horror movie person?
You know, I just rewatched Halloween 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Wow.
And you know what? I'm not a big horror guy, but I can tell you that 4 was better than I remember. 1 was really good. I didn't like 2 and 3. And Al Hitchcock was a sick pup. I watched Rear Window as a sophomore in high school in drama, and it terrified me. So I've been actually avoiding horror movies as a result subsequently since. But a friend of mine said, you know, we should rewatch Halloween leading up to Halloween. And now I'm just mad that I did all of that because I haven't been sleeping well. The Longlegs movie I heard was great, but I can't do it. I just can't get there.
Okay, so you don't want to be horrified when watching something. You don't want to feel fear, and Longlegs will do that. For just the trailer, it seems spooky.
I was horrified watching the trailer. I didn't know Nicolas Cage had that in his arsenal. But you know what's really crazy is that when you watch a horror movie, to your point, I always thought it was easier to make those movies. And now I've been validated by it. But the gore is a good point. And that's what made Halloween 1, for example, so good. It was less gore and more, it was so spooky. You know what I mean? I like the movies like A Sixth Sense, for example, where it's not quite as gory and it makes you think a lot. Those are hard to do, I think. And when you can bridge that gap, then you have someone like me who's not a horror classic guy, maybe a little more interested.
Are you a theater kid? Did you fail your way into NFL Insider? Like you wanted to be something else?
I wanted to be an actor. I did. I wanted to be an actor.
Wow.
Look like an actor.
I played hoops in college, not very well, but acting was the other. I wanted to be in front of the camera, and I wanted to be an actor. And actually, I finally landed a part in the 2025 Tron movie, the third one, which is coming out in about a year. I am in Tron, unless of course I get cut out, Dan.
Congratulations,
Jordan.
Thank you.
M. Night Shyamalan, not a gore guy, but stop making me think.
Overrated too.
M. Night. Have you seen what was the one he did with Sam Jackson? Was it Shattered Glass?
Glass.
Yeah. That one was pretty good, but you're right. Since The Sixth Sense, it's been
too many twists.
Thank you. Yeah.
Too cute.
Yeah. What was the movie he did with the people are outside the village or the
village?
Oh, that movie I was so into, and then it got so bad. That's what I think everyone expects, him to do the crazy twist at the end. Although I think his son just did a really good movie.
His daughter.
His daughter did a really good movie, or at least it was interesting, and it had some of that night.
I mean, what was that movie he did with the signs?
Yeah. Signs.
Signs.
What was that Apple show he did with the
survey?
The minor league home run king. That was a good movie. That was a good movie. When he yells to the children, "Vámonos, vámonos." That movie was good. I liked Signs. Even though the aliens were like Wimby, they were like 7'8".
They were very tall. They were awkward. They were very Wemby-ish. The thing that he's doing now on Apple Television that is a series that involves The Servant. What's the name of that?
I haven't seen that one. I'm not familiar. Please illuminate.
No, it's the servant. Yes, that's right. Thank you, Amin. Jordan,
I'm here for you.
Can you tell me if everyone is talking about the Lions as the best team in the NFC, if I tell you right now Lions are the field, you go which way there?
In the NFC?
Yes.
Yeah, give me the Lions. They are the most complete team. They're a wagon. They are. There's no M. Night Shyamalan twist with them. You know what you're getting. They are so complete. And now that they just added another really good pass rusher in Zadarius Smith, like this was the move that we all anticipated they would make the last few weeks. And Andrew Berry, the GM of the Browns, tried to get more. They end up getting a 5 back. But, you know, the Lions are never going to replace Aiden Hutchinson. He leads the league in sacks. But they realized, Dan, that they didn't have anybody else in their roster with more than 2.5 sacks. And they also realized they needed playoff experience. And this is a guy with nearly 70 career sacks, 8 playoff games, 3 Pro Bowls, and he's a professional. And he's been in the NFC North. He was so good with the Packers. I love that addition. Love the running backs. Obviously, the quarterback's been terrific. And once they really get Jameson Williams going again, I think that's going to complement Amon-Ra St. Brown. We obviously love the tight end. They just have a complete team, and give a lot of credit to Aaron Glenn, the DC. They've been better on that side this year. They're not as good defensively as the Chiefs, but they are really good. And I think they showed last week against the Packers on the road in bad weather that there's so much more than a dome team, because that was maybe the only question we had. Could the Lions be the same type of force in a bad weather situation? And they went and they beat Green Bay on their own turf. I know Jordan Love has been battling the injury, but that was about as impressive as I can ever see, as I can imagine from that team.
Well, can you tell me, though, Jordan, because you mentioned a lot of different things in giving credit to Detroit, and for some reason, I'm not sure why this is, I feel like not enough people are talking about the possibility that that offensive line has overtaken Philadelphia as the best offensive line in football. Why aren't people noticing that everything changed over there because of something that we should be noticing up front?
It's so basic to say, get a great offensive line, and yet it's so hard to do. A lot of teams try to invest in the position, and then they want to go and get a sexy draft pick at somewhere else. The Lions realized with Brad Holmes and with Dan Campbell, who really have the same DNA, that to build a great team, you got to build it inside out. And I would argue that they have the best, not only offensive, but with Hutchinson at least, one of the best defensive lines. And going back to the offensive side, they've taken care of all those guys. They paid every single one of them. And as a result, they're so consistent up front, and they're so committed to their DNA. You know, when you watch Detroit, especially on the 22, and you really see what they're doing, there's not like a whole lot of, you know, tricks. You know, they do run some cool stuff with Ben Johnson when they try to fool you. But as a result of how they're running the football with Gibbs and Montgomery, and for the way they protect Jared Goff, it's the perfect system for what they're doing, or for what they want to do with the play action. He's really become Goff, one of the best play action guys in the league. So yeah, I think they're overlooked because we're not used to Detroit being this good, and they're so consistent, and they're not as flashy maybe as a Baltimore or a Buffalo. But man, I just love watching them play, and I think they know exactly who they are.
Jordan, is it the return of Christian McCaffrey in San Francisco? What team is the biggest challenger to Detroit for the NFC title?
I would have said San Francisco 3 weeks ago. It's been a rough few weeks, and I know they're getting McCaffrey back, and that helps a lot. Philadelphia, over the last 3 weeks, has convinced me again, and I asked the scout last night, going, you know, post-deadline, with all these moves being made, Philadelphia, first time in 4 years, Howie Roseman did not pull the trigger on a deal with the deadline. I said, is Philadelphia one of these teams that can maybe challenge Detroit? And at least his opinion was yes. And the reason why was Jalen Hurts over the last few weeks has finally gotten back to the Jalen Hurts we saw a couple years ago when he was an MVP candidate and finished second. I think as long as A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are healthy, that team with that offensive line, and one of the things that is going to contend, but one of the things they did in the draft that was so impressive was they went 1-2 corner with Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo and Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. And I thought if they hit on one of those guys, let alone two, this year with Darius Slay, that secondary was going to be a problem for teams, and it has been. So if Philadelphia is going to stay healthy, and let's just assume they are, I think they do have the weaponry And, finally going back to that dominant running game with Saquon Barkley that could bother Detroit. I think
I'm not going to
Homefield
assume they
matter.
are. I'm not going to assume they stay healthy. I'm not going to assume anyone stays healthy.
fair.
They're playing football.
Yeah, that's
That
fair.
is fair. It is fair. Everybody
Yeah,
out
but
there is going to be
very
unhealthy.
aggressive, man.
It's
I
going to
mean,
be everybody's going to be unhealthy.
He agreed, though.
Your analysis is going to be rendered irrelevant
He
by
said it's
everyone
fair.
getting hurt from playing football.
No, I get it. And I guess as a fan first, I always want to see teams at their best. And if we can say that Detroit and Philly are at their best, I still think Detroit's better, but I feel better about Detroit now than I ever have. Again, going back to last week where they were finally able to show that they can win against a really good team on the road in a bad weather environment.
Jordan, I see that you have a plaque back there, the captain. Not sure how big of a Yankees fan you are, but there was a lot of Yankees hot stove talk today at the office, and a big debate broke out because the Yankees fans here were saying that they wanted Corey Seager, and then as the debate went on, settled for we'll take Joey Wendell. So if you are in fact a Yankees fan, would you go Seager or Wendell to improve the pinstripes there?
I love Corey Seager. I think that was I'm based in New York. That's what all the Yankee fans wanted. But the bigger question over the last week, and I was at the World Series Game 3, which was awful. The bigger question was what's going to happen with Juan Soto. I grew up a big Mariner fan, really bad team to root for growing up.
Thank you.
Not successful. But the Yankees being in New York have become my adopted team. Everyone wanted Corey Seager.
Ugh.
That's the proper sound, the sound that you made of disgust there for adopted team. The Yankees
Adopting
can't
the
be
Yankees.
You can't.
Come
Your
on,
Yankees
what are you
can't be
doing?
your.
I know.
adopted
I'm
team.
Cowboys fan too. Get out of here.
No, it's just because I'm a joke. I should not have done that. But
All right. Thank you for that admission. I appreciate Jordan, I appreciate that moment of self-evaluation where you looked hard in the mirror and you're like, yeah, I deserve everything you guys are giving me. It's wrong to adopt the Yankees as my team. It's immoral. And in honor of you, though, and in honor of what it is that we've been talking about, Stugotz has a top 5 list for you.
Yes.
A top 5 list of what, Stugotz?
This is a top 5 list of people in sports and entertainment that connote a horror film.
Whose name connotes a horror film?
Yes.
Okay.
Or something you might find in a horror film, you know.
Okay.
Yes.
OLI or just number 5?
I have 2 of those, yeah.
All right, OLI.
Lon Kruger.
Lon Kruger has been the former college basketball coach.
Yes, yeah. Freddie.
Yeah, it's just a
Oh,
Freddie.
I like
it's
that.
just
He could be Freddie's screwed up brother.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
Lon Chaney.
That's fine. We don't need commentary on everyone. OLI.
Tyler Hansborough, Psycho T.
Number 2.
Number 5.
Mike Myers.
1.
Number 4.
Matthew Kachuk.
I don't see it.
Chucky.
Chucky, yeah.
Number
Chucky.
Number
Who is
3.
this guy? Frank Gore.
Number 2.
Slash.
Number 1.
Jerry Kill.
It's just a terrible list.
You're laughing.
Yes, I am laughing because of how bad it is. Jordan, what did you find interesting about the trade deadline? Is the transactions? Dallas? Yeah, everyone thinks that's weird.
I don't understand what this organization's doing. I never understand what Jerry Jones is doing. Let me preface it by saying that. But they paid a 4th round pick. I know they sent a 7 back, but they paid a 4th round pick to Carolina for Jonathan Mingo, who I liked coming out of school at Ole Miss, but hasn't done a lot in 2 years there. And Jerry basically said, we're going to go get a receiver. But they didn't get a receiver that can necessarily help them right now. And even if they felt we needed to upgrade at that position, okay, fine. Dak Prescott's on IR. You haven't had Parsons. You haven't had Lawrence. You're not a competitive football team right now. And they overpaid. It's just bad business. If you think about, for example, even Pittsburgh going out and getting Mike Williams, they paid a 5, maybe it was a little steep, but Pittsburgh feels like they're a receiver away, right? They feel like we have a great defense. Now we need to complement George Pickens with a big body guy that can win inside the 20s. Dallas is so far away from being in that conversation that it doesn't make sense. If anything, go out and draft a couple receivers in 2025, but also Washington. I give Washington a lot of credit because I think before the season, most people, including myself, felt like this team was maybe around a 500 club. Now they're 7-2. They're in first place, sole possession of the NFC East halfway through the year. They have this great young talent in Jaden Daniels, and they have a surplus of picks, including a number 3 pick that they got in the Jahan Dotson trade. They go out and they trade that to a really depleted New Orleans team, realizing they have a hard reset, and they get a bona fide shutdown corner in Marcus Lattimore. And I don't know how much this has been reported, but they had to outbid the likes of Baltimore and Kansas City and maybe one other club. And as a result, Washington now feels to me like a pretty complete football team. That was the one position that offensive coordinators felt like they could attack was corner. They had a dearth of corners. Now they go out and get a 4-time Pro Bowler who's 28. And oh, by the way, they're only paying him $600,000 the rest of the year. So I really like what the Commanders did. One more team I'll give you is Kansas City. They weren't active yesterday necessarily, but they get Josh Uche and they get D-Hop. And they paid less for D-Hop than Dallas paid for Mingo. I mean, it's mind-boggling. So Kansas City addresses a need in DeAndre Hopkins, who destroyed Tampa the other day. Was really the sole reason they won that game, or one of them, and they upgraded that position. And oh, by the way, they get Josh Uche, who had 10.5 sacks 2 years ago. So I like what the Chiefs did as well.
Jordan, I feel like we've buried the most important story of the day in this conversation with you, which is you're in Tron. Wait, okay, so what's the role that you're playing, and what was the casting process like?
I mean, this is the question that I have been bothering my wife with for the last 6 months, because I always said, had things shake differently, I could have been a really good B-level actor, low B actor. And she said, no, you couldn't have. I had an in with the director. I knew the director, and I had been bothering him for 5 years.
You work hard.
If you're ever doing a movie and you need, just a random part, I would be more than happy to do it. I'll pay my way into the movie. I don't care what it takes. Put me in that film. So he's doing Tron. His name is his American name is Joachim Ronning. He's Norwegian. And he says to me about a year ago, I got cast to do this movie, and I want to know if you would want to play the in-city reporter. I said, what do you mean? He says to me, well, we're going to be having quite a few reporter shots, and you could be basically the on-camera or on-site reporter. So that's exactly what I did. I went and I flew to Vancouver on my own dime. They didn't pay me to do that. I flew to Vancouver last April, and I shot 3 scenes in Tron, and it was insane. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life. And he told me last week when I saw him, he said, I've been seeing you a lot in the dailies. Thus far, I haven't cut you out of the film.
Thus far, that's big. Thus far.
Wow.
Do you remember any of your lines? Do you remember any of the lines that you had to memorize?
Yeah, there's a part where I'm standing up. I have my microphone, and I'm talking into the camera, and I'm looking around because he's telling me you got to pretend like there's some kind of alien invasion. There's crazy stuff up above you, and you have to pretend like you're kind of freaked out. So I go in front, and I'm really happy. I'm so giddy to have this opportunity. So I'm smiling, talking about essentially an alien invasion, and we're on the ground, and we're all and sorry for the bad language.
You're so getting cut out of this movie.
You're giving away too much, Jordan. You're going to get cut
What
out
are
of the
you doing?
movie. I mean, what are you
I know.
doing?
No, so basically what happened was he says, I like the energy. He comes up to me and he talks to me. He goes, I like the energy, but nobody's happy about the situation. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're the only person that we've had that is really excited about the alien invasion. And he said, you got to pretend like you're mortified. There's a boat coming in. There's crazy lights. And he said, it's going to be there, and I can't have you as my lead on-site reporter.
Yeah, that's a good point by him. Good
smiling,
directing.
talking
Yes, good
about
directing.
all the crazy.
Yes.
So I said, oh, so you want me to tone it down? And I'll never forget, he stops and he goes, yeah. And I said, okay, I can do that. And so I had to, do my little acting. And this is when I realized, acting is really hard. Because I'm so excited to be in this movie. I gotten SAG certified. I paid my way to Vancouver for a night shoot. I have my own makeup person. It's this whole operation. And so I had to really tone it down. I did about 27 takes. And afterward, I don't know if you guys ever watched my favorite show of all time. You ever watch Curb?
Oh,
of course.
Dude, come on.
Which one's
Okay.
that?
The Bears in the Woods.
Yeah, exactly. So
What are you
my
doing?
favorite Curb episode
It was needed.
is when
It was
is
not
early
needed.
on, like season 4, when Jeff and Susie's daughter sings a birthday song to who was it? To
You'll find it.
they sing a birthday song to Ted Danson, I believe it was. That's what it was.
You found
she
it.
sings a birthday song to Ted Danson. And when she does it, halfway through, Larry goes, "Yeah, okay, talented kid, talented
Because
kid."
she's awful.
And they end it. He ruins the birthday.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what this guy did to me, the director. He was like, "Oh, okay, yeah." And he ended it.
The fact that you did something so excitedly that made the director come out and remind you that you had to act, that you had to be an actor, that you had to stop being so excited that you were giving off that it was fun to being attacked by the aliens was great. Jordan, you were great. Thank
Yes.
you very much for the time and the analysis.
I look forward to not seeing you in
you're
that
getting
movie.
cut,
Yes.
man.
No.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send you a photo or a quick video of the conversation that we had.
Nice.
And you're going to see this is the point where he tells me, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
Excellent work, Jordan. Thank
I'm sure
you.
the director will love that. I mean, Jordan,
I want.
Jesus.
It's great. All of it was great. A great story. Thank you for being on with us.
Tell us
Jordan.
the end before you leave.
No, I don't want to hear any more about Tron.
Because I'm cut out of the movie, I didn't get that part.
Okay.
Hey.
Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, Jordan.
I don't want, though, another minute to go by. Not one more minute to go by without addressing Chris Cote getting so comfortable inside of an interview that he asked the question seriously, does a bear shit in the woods?
That question has not been asked since the 80s.
I mean, if you ask me if I've watched Curb, that's the response.
That is not the proper response. I was stunned by that response. I've heard that response a number of different times from grandparents throughout my past.
We had a better question lined up that we ran out of time for that honestly would have killed. It would have been one of Chris's shining moments had he asked the question.
I was going to ask about the glove behind him. Is that Babe Ruth, your stepson? Callback.
Yes,
Callback.
I get the callback. Yes, and I'm aware
Because
of
of
what
the guy
No,
that's
I know,
never
Billy,
coming on
I'm
again.
Remember that?
Yeah, I am aware of Billy being Maximum Billy.
Me?
I do
Dan,
remember that.
Dan, had he asked that question, we would have had to record an oral history episode on the spot. Because that's a Hall of Fame. That would have been a Hall of Fame callback.
Does a bear shit in the woods?
Had to be asked.
It did not have to be asked.
It was needed, Dan.
No.
Good energy.
Does it?
I like Jordan.
Yeah.
I could see it getting old, though, if I was his wife, right?
Yeah, no way he makes
Just
the movie.
him?
The energy.
Like, I could see her. She's like, yeah, go talk to your friends about the movie. I'm tired of hearing
Don't
about Tron
do
3.
that.
Now
to
I
him.
understand why I'm treated the way I'm treated here.
Don't do that to him.
We said he was a great guest.
He was
Yes.
just lovely.
I
Yes.
followed him on
Awesome.
Instagram.
Wait a minute. You said he's a great guest,
Yeah.
and you said he gets annoying to his wife as
I
soon
didn't
as he
say
leaves.
no. I never said annoying.
said
I
his
never
wife.
said the A word.
I mean, a Suey nominee.
For
Him
what?
calling
Admission.
himself a
Yes.
joke.
He called himself a joke.
Breaking news: him being cast in a film.
Yeah.
You seem to have petered out some.
Yeah, I have.
He's tired.
I really have.
We checked out the
Long
Al
night.
Hitchcock box, and he was good.
Long
He
night.
did. He hasn't said very much since Al Hitchcock.
They cut him. They cut Jordan cutting room floor.
This is new and unimproved Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz. Gamble on by DraftKings.
My dad just did what you have to do. Whenever somebody else has lost their phone, you got to just make sure you know where your phone is.
Yeah.
Like I just saw Stugotz just said, hey, can someone find my phone out there? And my dad did the normal thing of,
Right.
where's my phone? Okay, it's right
Yes.
here. I'm good to go.
Yeah, but he knows his phone is secure, and he's not concerned about my phone.
Wasn't very considerate what he did.
Very selfish
He
of
was
you.
just like,
We're on the air.
yeah, Greg, what do we like?
I didn't know. What do I know? Nobody alerts me.
Dad, we want to give you a space here. This is the post game show.
Uh-huh.
You know, you're leaving us for the week here.
Right on.
Talk to us. What did we not get to today that you wanted to get to?
I think we got to everything. Everything was on my list. There were pleasant surprises in store. I loved being able to talk about why the Inter Miami season is going to be a disappointment / failure if they don't win the MLS Cup. So I think I'm good, man. I feel good. I feel as good as I can, given extenuating circumstances.
Our interview with Jordan Schultz made me think, did you ever have aspirations of being a performer?
I'm certain he did.
When you were young.
Yep.
You still can.
Yeah.
You know, I used to entertain my family. Much as you and your brother did for a time.
Mm-hmm.
You would stand up on a table, and you don't remember that?
I don't think this is unique to us. I think a lot of kids at age like 3 and 4 like dance for their families.
Okay, but older as well. You guys were doing it when you were like 9 and 5.
I
or
remember
whatever.
always dancing to "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel.
Yeah,
Like
that's
Nana and
true.
Pop would be on the couch, and me and
Classic.
Michael would come.
Yeah.
We'd come running in the room and dance into that song.
Yeah,
How
it
would
was a
you
big
dance?
Performance.
A lot of times Michael would be like in a hamper, and I would be like, and there would be a blanket over it, so I'd be like sliding the hamper in, and I'd start dancing, and all of a sudden Michael pops out of the hamper.
Yeah.
Choreographed?
No, not that detailed.
Oh.
That's a
Long
good
intro,
point.
way too long of an intro for that song. Just get to it. It's like 45 seconds of what Jeremy's doing.
It's the worst.
Let's
yes.
get to it.
Greg, I think of you as a classic song and dance man.
I was an entertainer when I was a kid.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You're an entertainer now.
I mean, what can I tell you? You know, that kind of thing, so forth and so on.
All I remember you telling me as a kid, like something you wanted to be when you grew up, was a bus driver because you liked the idea of driving a
big
big
wheel.
wheel.
I like the flat steering wheel.
Yeah.
The wheel you had to go up and go like that. I wanted to be a FM DJ.
Really?
I
Do you have a
wanted to be
name?
a
Can you
bus
do like a
driver.
walkthrough what that would have sounded like?
Well, the famous Uncle Dick referred to them as sleepy DJs.
Right.
You know, because it sounded like
Of course,
they were
yes.
all doped up. You know,
Yes.
it's late at night.
Ron
Isn't it?
St. John. Yeah.
Coming up next on WROK, we got the latest from Santana.
Huh.
Dig it. You know.
You know something that occurred to me earlier today,
Their catchphrase?
but we didn't have time to get to, and I didn't want to interrupt because it was like an important day.
I now know why that dream never came true.
It occurred to me that, Greg, your family has a lot of nicknames. There's Wild Bill. Uncle Dick, obviously self-explanatory. He's the uncle. But you don't have a nickname, do you? Like, there's no, when you know, we speak about you in years to come, it's just Greg Cote. You don't have like a catchy nickname.
I don't know.
Have you wanted one?
Like, what will Graceland refer to you when she's in her 40s? Talking about my old, like, you know, like, are you
Old
going to be
Pap,
Wild
yeah.
Greg or something? The way
No,
you
it
say
can't
Wild.
be Wild Greg. It's Wild Bill.
would
Yeah, it's
hope-
Wild Bill.
I would hope Pop, she would call me Pop.
No,
Right.
but we need
Grandpa.
a-
Know your
yeah.
family, Chris.
We
I
need like
mean,
an
geez.
adjective.
Right.
Yeah. Was Wild Bill when Bill was with us?
Yeah.
Who
Okay.
gave Bill that nickname?
Yeah.
I did.
Are you the
Did
assigner
you?
of all nicknames in the
think
family?
I am. I'm
Yeah.
the commissioner of nicknames.
Wow.
Cal Hitchcock.
Can you hand that down to someone or no? Or does that go with you?
I'll hold auditions.
Really?
Title.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you don't just give that away.
Yes.
You have
It's
to
an
earn
honor.
it.
Yeah.
You have to earn it.
Does it have to stay in the family? Because like maybe I look, I don't know. I don't want to just be appointing it, but I feel like there's someone that would love to toss his hat in there. I feel like Yeti would love that responsibility.
He is part of the family.
I think
he
so, too.
Probably would. Yeah.
Is Yeti in the will?
Not yet.
Not Yeti.
Not Yeti.
Wow. You surprise me still sometimes.
Well, come up with a nickname for me. Who's got a good nickname for me?
All right, so look, should we turn this into like an audience thing? Like, why don't you tweet at us at LeBatard Show, at Greg Cote, at what's your show's?
The Greg Cote Show.
At the Greg Cote Show, like just Greg's nickname, what it should be, and then maybe from there you can get like a good one and then pick one. Not Lobo Greg, but I feel like the Lobos are synonymous with Greg.
They are.
Yeah.
Lobo Greg is not the worst I've heard though. That's
You'll
pretty
get better from the audience.
What's the worst you've heard?
You don't want to know.
We
You
do.
don't want to know.
You don't want to know.
Wow, a new wrinkle.
I like it.
Take us home, Dad.
I got nothing. I'm out of material.